actually watch it recently, so I don't know what we're up for. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is myself and UDP looking at yet another wonderful, well, what do we call this? It's actually a decent video about Mass Effect Andromeda being secretly good. And we're going to skip the first 12 minutes, not because we can't or we shouldn't. It's just because it's kind of like, yep, gameplay is better. There's more of it. That's a positive. It's the one thing that Andromeda is known and good for. So whatever BioWare did with Andromeda and all the faults and failings it had, you can look to the gameplay and say, you know what? They did some work with the gameplay. It's different. It's new. It's exciting. It's more dynamic. It kind of gets out of the cover shooter mechanic and sort of opens it up a bit more. It has the jump jets. It's got all those profiles. It's got some different melee weapons, even though the melee weapons weren't as impactful, perhaps, as the previous Mass Effects. But the gameplay is there, and that's. I don't want to contend it. I didn't play it, so I can't really say much. And I think everyone can agree it was an improvement over the third game in some ways, but mostly forward than mostly backward. So we're gonna skip, and I'm going to 12 minutes. Where are we? Okay.
Let's change tacks to another area where Mass Effect Andromeda doesn't get the appreciation it deserves. Its story. Something I was pretty cynical about before launch. Despite some well-produced trailers, I didn't know too much about the story, and what I had seen seemed to suffer from Save the World-itis. This debilitating disease infects many games, and can be defined as when a story introduces an interesting, unique, and grounded plotline, only for it to eventually devolve into a story about the hero saving the world from a bad man. Terminal sufferers of this disease include Dragon Age Inquisition, Final Fantasy Tactics, and I assume that Andromeda would fall into this camp as well. Colonizing another galaxy and dealing with the natives seemed like a perfectly interesting story in and of itself, without the need for these weird space orc guys to generic the place up. Although this is still basically the case in the final product, Andromeda's story is still a lot stronger than I gave it credit for, and it managed to win me over pretty early on with a metatextual element to the narrative that demonstrates the care and attention this mostly new cast of creators had for the Mass Effect franchise.
All right. I don't know what made a meta narrative texture or whatever he was talking about, but he obviously likes it. So
yeah, I think if he's coming in from the angle of these are the reasons why I like the game and stuff like that, that's fine. But he's saying secretly good, as in like it's objectively good in comparison to something else. And it's like, oh, now we're getting into dangerous territory. You know, it's
the idea of something being secretly another thing, meaning on the surface it's bad, but when you actually think about it or when you pay attention, it's actually good, which is a very strange. It's like saying this chocolate cake is secretly vanilla. It's just like, well, no, it's chocolate cake and it's a bad chocolate cake. Maybe they threw some vanilla in there, but it's still categorized as chocolate cake, whether there's vanilla in it or not. So hard to say. We're going to find out, though.
Well, you could also say it's about the idea of execution, and then, but you know, what was advertised and what was executed. It's like, is it secretly good in potential? Yes, everything's got the potential, but BioWare completely balls this up. So no.
Yeah, in order for something to be actually good, you have to define characteristics that, again, we're going with the idea that something is secretly good, so you're not aware of it. It has to be analyzed to say, okay, if you look at it from this perspective, all these objective elements, when added together, produce something greater than what you see on the surface. Or there's some plot line that you weren't aware of because there's so many plot threads and it's so confusing. And if only you were smart enough and if only you paid attention, you would have gotten that. So there's that other aspect. And I don't know where he's going to go with this. So I'm hoping for something like that.
Element can be found in the personal dimension of Andromeda's story, the story of the writers. The idea of the player having a family is something BioWare has flirted with from time to time. Imoen, being the Baldur's Gate PC's childhood friend, and later half-sister, encourage you to keep her around despite her somewhat limited effectiveness in combat. Dragon Age Origins gave the player some degree of family with whom they could interact with both before and after you began your journey. Dragon Age 2 lent into family quite a bit, giving the player a brother and a sister, one of whom, depending on your class, would die, a mother whose well-being you'll be in charge of for much of the game, a verbally abusive uncle whom you'd be indebted to, and, potentially, a romantic interest who would move in with you and engage in a more domestic depiction of romance that had ever really been seen in a Bioware game. When I first played Dragon Age 2, I found this use of family really interesting, in a genre that so often relies on the trope of the orphaned hero without a home, and Mass Effect Andromeda revisits it in an effective way. In the original Mass Effect games, while you could choose backgrounds for Shepard that would change how he got to where he was today, there wasn't a single one that actually had any real influence over his story or character. A couple of side quests aside, Shepard was effectively a blank slate, free for you to shape as you willed. Ryder, the player character of Mass Effect Andromeda, by contrast has a much more defined relationship with her family. She'll always have a great affection for her dead mother.
I don't think having a flashback where your mother is poorly voice acted to explain her debilitating disease is a great relationship, but it is a form of conflict, and it does explain Ryder's dad's reasons for doing all this. That's true, but she's not a character in the story. I mean, it's like, imagine in Dragon Age 2, your mom was just not there, and you had like one flashback, and that was it. Like that's the relationship.
Even your relationship with your father in that game is very, very limited, and it just kind of raises the question of nepotism.
Yeah,
It's like, I need to look after my son and daughter and whatnot. I know, let's go on this high-risk mission on this completely dangerous alien planet. Nothing can go wrong there. What?
Well, he's giving the example that BioWare knows how to do family or has done family. So it's like, yes, they have done family, not very well. And he gave the example of Baldur's Gate, and I'm thinking, well, sure, that was a story about family. Your dad is the Lord of Murder, and you were the next in line, and all that crap. But is it really about family? It's more of an adventure to figure out what the heck is going on in this magical world, and having all these wizards do crazy things, and all sorts of other plot threads. So I think they're good with ideas. It's the expressions of those ideas that we're a little skeptical of them being able to handle, at least anymore. Maybe Mass Effect with Shepard could have definitely had more character than what we saw in the first game, where he was just his background, and he had those 3 side missions where you run a gang, and then your old gang catches up with you, and all that other stuff. So, family, not really. You get a mommy in one of them, and she has a few voice lines in Mass Effect 3. So the idea of having a sister is a great idea. It's just the execution, and of course, all it did was lend itself to silly memes of ridiculous facial constructions and how your dad looks crazy, and that's about it. And your dad just sacrifices himself for no good reason, even though we're shown how you could actually repair your helmet, and it happens throughout the first 10-20 minutes, and it's like, oh, why didn't he just do that?
And there's no like protocol for like a smashed lens, a faceplate.
Yeah.
Like, it just freaks out. Like, you would have something to protect yourself with a backup anything. It's like, come on.
What would a spaceman do when he gets a hole in his suit, in his glove, in his helmet? Oh, you just whip it off. That's it. You totally whip it off and pull on someone else's helmet. That's it. That's the solution. So
I like the fact that these people didn't actually test their helmets to survive impact. Like, these things can survive like impact from like high velocity rounds, but one little bump on the ground, it's like, oh, it's gone.
I know.
Just shatters.
I know. If you look at the glass that we have nowadays that we put into space shuttles, or the same stuff we put into our helmets, that stuff is incredibly durable. It is, I don't know how much metric tons of force it can take, but it's ridiculous. Oh. And it seems as if they downgraded in technology. When Mass Effect Andromeda came by, he falls from terminal velocity with jump jets slowing him down, and crack. He gets a little hole. Okay, fixes that. But the other one is getting blasted from an air cannon from the whatever you call those machines that the progenitors were making.
Oh, the remnant, yeah.
Remnant tech, and it's like, oh, my helmet it's opened even further. Oh dear. I have this mini manufacturing device on my arm that can build guns and bullets. I'll just not use that.
Yeah, it always bothers me that everyone always talks about this whole bit about like a survival game, but you'd have a belt order on you for all kinds of kit, and yet these guys seem to be running around virtually naked. It's like I would like to see a belt order, like webbing pouches, all sorts of crazy
Right.
things stuck on them,
That's
because they're
why,
survival.
yeah, yeah. If you look at the first game, you had all these guns on your back, and they were compact. They were ready to go. You were all set up. Everyone got a rifle. Everyone knew how to clean it. Everyone knew how to use it. That was standard issue. Even though if it's just a gun, it's like there's some history. There's some lore. There's a culture of the military, and and there was different helmets as well. You had helmets just with the visors. You had full face helmets. You had all sorts of different types of gear, and they have to keep that as loose as possible because if they don't, the scene wouldn't work. The scene would have to be subverted somehow. Like they would have to have a backup helmet or a backup visor, and that would fail. And your dad would just freak out and say, "I don't know what to do." Boom. I'm going to have to replace the helmet, make the sacrifice. Like, see, that would be even more impactful because then they would show a level of sophistication and detail you want in a science fiction story. And then you have the familial father figure sacrifice himself. And you go, geez, he's actually going to do it. He's actually going to say, "This is after I've tried everything. I'm gonna give my life to my kid."
It should be his O2 unit that cracked, not his helmet.
Oh yeah, and he would just be gasping
Like,
for air, right?
yeah, he'd basically be flailing around on the guy, like basically breathing in this alien atmosphere as he's like, and the dad's just watching his son or daughter die right in front of him. He's like, I got to do something. And he does it. It's like, that would make a lot more sense rather than just, you know, taking each other's like just exhale hard when you put the helmet back on just to push up that alien atmosphere.
Yeah, I know. Like, any kind of survival, like hold your breath for 10 seconds while I take a breath, and then you do the same, and it's just like okay, back and forth, something. Like he still has air somewhere in his suit. We just didn't know what the hell happened to it.
A somewhat strained relationship with her father and will be very close to your brother. The details can be affected by your own decisions, but the broad strokes remain the same. While this does reduce the scope of roleplay within Ryder's character somewhat, this slight reduction does buy the game the ability to intertwine its personal family plot with a healthy dose of metatext that deals with Mass Effect Andromeda's complicated relationship with the original trilogy.
Oh boy. Okay. I thought he was going to say the complicated relationship between the family, but we only get a few side quests which aren't really related. He actually tied it into the trilogy of Mass Effect, which is I don't even know what like the meta text. Like, what is he talking about now? I don't know.
Alec Ryder, the player character's father, is an N7, just like Commander Shepard.
Okay, okay, I see where he's going.
Also like Shepard, he's a visionary leader, looked up to as a paragon by those under his command.
Is Shepard a visionary leader?
He's a visionary brick.
He is a brick. Does he have a vision? He has visions.
Well, those only mattered in the first game.
That's true. Like, there's nothing. He has no real philosophy aside from we have to stop the Reapers, but first let's go for ice cream for like a year and a half or whatever it was. I don't think he has a vision. Shepard is not an idea guy.
Yeah, he was following orders. It was basically what we call duty bit, right? He was like, Shepard, you need to go do this, right? Roger that. Click, click. Off he goes. It's a flipping wooden top, is what he is.
Yeah, pretty much. So, but we will continue. See what he has to say about Shepard.
And, just like Shepard, he's been ostracized from certain elements of government due to radical notions they are unwilling or unable to accept.
Shepard's beyond government. He's not only an N7, so he's the best of the best. He's also a Spectre. So he's advanced beyond the concepts or the confines of one military political system. He is carte blanche. He is James Bond. He is licensed to do whatever is needed. So, and that's even made more apparent after Mass Effect 1, where he gets killed and gets brought back, and then he could be reinstated. And it's like, oh, now you reset yourself. Now you're alive again, and we didn't know, and da da da. And you're with a terrorist organization, but we don't care. It's just like, yeah, I can do anything. No one cares. So I don't think Shepard's really ostracized. They're just sort of like a legend that was forgotten. It's like, oh, is that Commander Shepard? He's alive? Really? Oh, okay. What's he doing? Buying fish? All right, whatever.
Yeah, he's doing advertisements now. I mean, it's like, imagine if Shepard actually was dead and he was just using his face to be plastered all over advertisements. That would just be morally repugnant. We would never do anything like that now, would we?
It's basically reverse Captain America. What are you doing?
Yeah.
It's clear then that Alec is representative of Shepard, and thus the original Mass Effect trilogy, while
Alec is representative Shepard, and thus Alec is representative of the original Mass Effect trilogy. Okay, so he's theorizing, or this is his idea, that the player character's dad represents Mass Effect trilogy. Okay, let's go with that.
you, the player rider, is a younger, more inexperienced soldier, struggling to live up to the weight of the legacy and responsibility that has been suddenly thrust upon you. When we understand that the relationship between Ryder
It
and
wasn't thrust upon you, though. It was given to you. Yeah, it wasn't like the entire. It wasn't like, say, I'm trying to think of one of the Star Trek shows. It's the DS9 one where the cadets take over a Defiant class vessel,
Right.
Valiant, and it's like the entire command crew just got wiped out. So it's now up to the cadets to do this thing, and they make mistakes because they're only cadets. They might be, was it Red Squadron, or is it, or something like that? And it's like, yeah, they are the best of the best within the cadets, but in terms of operational experience as actual sailors or Marines or whatever, no. So they're going to be making all these problems. But this is just like, yeah, Ryder's the leader now. Ryder gets a ship. Ryder gets a Nomad. It's like there's no feeling of gain. It's just given to you. It's
Yeah, and when you combine
no
that with the SAM implant, which I guess everyone already had, but he gets the full experience. I guess the version, the beta version, and everyone gets the alpha version. I don't know.
doesn't that mean that everyone has the capacity to access SAM in that way? Because like if everyone has the implant, then everyone has the capacity to like use SAM in that way. You know what I mean? It's you have to just activate some protocols.
That's all it is protocols. Yeah, everyone has the same access. They just don't use it for some reason, or it's defined as because he's the Pathfinder dude. Now he's in charge, and he gets all the CPU cycles that no one else gets. So
father is symbolic of the relationship between Mass Effect Andromeda and the original trilogy, it becomes clear that Andromeda is placing the first three games on a pedestal that it, consciously, does not feel capable of living up to.
that's interesting because they wanted to be inspired or use Mass Effect 1 as an inspiration for their work, and that was kind of the message we got during the development of the game, which is fine. But he's actually personifying that through Alec Ryder, which I'm like, yeah, okay, it's stretching it a bit thin, but okay.
This dichotomy is best demonstrated in this
It's not a dichotomy. It's a theory that he's personifying. It could be many things. It could be nothing. There's no dichotomy.
memorable early scene where the riders fight alongside each other for the last time. Unless you're a vanguard who liberally uses the charge ability, you're not even going to remotely keep up with your father, who will effortlessly blow through the opposition with alarming speed and efficiency. Considering the AI in the rest of the game is somewhat clunky to say the least, I think it's apparent that a lot of effort went into giving Alec this appearance, and it works really well. It's also made clear that Alec is making use of profiles in this section, a mechanic Shepard did not have, but one that pointedly the player as Ryder will have. This subtly indicates that the journey the player will be undertaking as Ryder will not just be about them getting stronger and leveling up in the traditional RPG manner, but will be about Andromeda slowly being able to metaphorically live up to the standards set by the original Mass Effect trilogy. Now that's good stuff.
The metaphor of what to translate into Mass Effect series. I don't get how profiles equates to Alec, or sorry, well, no longer Alec, but as the Ryder sibling to step into the shoes of the trilogy. I don't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, I think one of Andromeda's problems is that they tried to take elements from or components from Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3 and went, okay, we'll try and make this into this new one. It's like, no, it should be its own individual thing with its own identity, because when you actually look at 1, 2, 3, whether or not you think they're all good or bad, they are their own independent things. They're actually, you could honestly say that they are separate, completely separate games. Really, I mean, the story is only loosely connected. It's like saying what the Call of Duty series is a trilogy because you had Modern Warfare 1, 2, and 3.
I know, but he's trying to make the connection between the trilogy and this new game, and the father personifying this, and then the profile system through Sam meaning you are taking up the mantle of Mass Effect. It's like, well, it's a Mass Effect game. You're going to want some similarities. But when you talk about personification, you're actually saying this character represents a bigger idea or another idea. And it's not really that clear. They could have chosen Riley, the N7 from Mass Effect 3, to go on this mission. And it's like, well, she's an N7, and therefore she's just like Shepard. It's like, actually, she's closer to Shepard. She's a no-name N7. Shepard's a no-name N7 with some background. And they're being tasked for an impossible mission or whatever, and that would be even better. But because there's families, or a family, I'm like, yeah, I don't see it.
At the end of the sequence, the riders come across a bizarre alien device, and the discovery is really sold by the direction, soundtrack, and dialogue to be something truly majestic. Something Ryder specifically says is,
"These are the moments that make it all worthwhile."
this is actually somewhat at odds with his role as a Shepard parallel if you look at the original trilogy as a whole. Shepard's role there could far more often be likened that of a soldier diplomat rather than an explorer, with one exception. The one game in the series that truly prioritised that aspect of its design, and the game that Andromeda continually looks to as its foundation, the original. Alec Ryder is a Shepard parallel, yes, but I think, specifically, he's more than that.
Okay, first he says the example of him being an explorer or archaeologist or whatever is at odds with the Shepard character. It's like, well, yes, anything that's different than Shepard is at odds. So I don't know what the point is, but the analogy is not like he's trying to this meta narrative of personifying the games as Alec is just like, I don't know. It's such a strange thing to say. If you want to go that far, you say, okay, well, Alec is like part Liara, part Shepard, part this, part that. You're like, all right, fine. He's all these things. And then he has to die because the series is over. You have to do something new. And then the child becomes the parent and all that crap. You're like, all right, fine, yes. But you're not drawing that connection. And it's not even symbolic. It's just an event that happens and it's done poorly, as we talked about with the oxygen. So that could be a better analogy. That could be a better meta-narrative where the player character or the player is looking at this and going, this is what they spent all this time on. This is the thing they're trying to tell us is just like the trilogy that we were given before, and the failings therein. So, and this is purely from storytelling. I'm not talking about gameplay and all the Nomad and all the graphics and all that. I'm just talking about the characters and what became of them in comparison to, let's say, the plot function of Liara or the usefulness of Joker or what Edie represented, all that stuff. And here we're just like, oh, there's a guy with an AI in his head. He's an N7. He's an archaeologist. He's a dad. He's a husband. It's like, okay, yeah. What else? And what is this? He sucks. He's no good.
Well, he does have one thing in common with Shepard, though, and that is he dies in the first 10 minutes of the game.
Ah, yes, that's true.
But he doesn't go splat. So
unfortunately, yeah. See, he's not a complete, clear analogy. So that would defer to the idea that the metaphor is wrong, but he has to die completely. It had to do with his helmet. We know his brain was, I guess, somewhat preserved. In this case, his brain was the first to go. So
I can't remember, but when I was reading one of the leaked scripts, apparently you were actually supposed to be chasing Alec Ryder Sr. and trying to hunt him down because basically he's running around activating all the REM tech and it's causing havoc across, the space and whatnot. And basically you have the choice to basically kill or save him, really, or try to bring him back, or like he basically just went rogue.
Yeah, see, I would want Alec Ryder as a villain more than I want him as a corpse, and he's just more interesting than any other character in the rest of the universe that we're given. And if he was running around like a Saren character with a chase after him, there's your analogy. There's your direct parallel to Mass Effect. Wouldn't that have been, at least in theory, a better idea to have your dad that's gone rogue and he's like being possessed by Sam or whatever, and you have to go stop him? I would like to see that, as opposed to here, Ryder, child, here are the protocols. You go save us.
That would actually, yeah, that would tie in with the rebels as well, because it's like, when you were still in cryo, Alec was just getting fed up with the regime, who were just like racked by indecision. And it's like, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to do this by myself. Grabbed a group of followers, grabbed some materials, and just went off and started doing things by himself.
I thought that's what Pathfinders were going to be, like Spectres. They were just like, I am the guy in charge. I call the shots. There's a frontier out there and no one's in charge. I'm in charge. Here we go. Shoot to kill. This is our land. We're actually going to be colonialists or colonists, and we are going to take everything over. Like that would have been a mentality of a Pathfinder. But we don't know what a Pathfinder is. We don't know, aside from a gameplay class or the new gameplay class. It's just whatever.
It's a jack of all trades. It's the bard.
The bard class.
Yeah, and Pathfinder was just the bard class of Mass Effect.
Inspires people by singing.
Yeah, well, hopefully he's better dancer than Shepard.
Well,
so
well, that's because he tells the tale of the shepherd. That's what he does.
He's the living avatar of Mass Effect 1, that flawed game that started it all. At the end of the scene, the machine backfires in some way, which could be representative of the ultimate failure of Mass Effect 1's exploration elements, but even I think I'm reaching a little with that one. And
Yeah, he's just really stretching this out.
both riders find themselves flung out into the wilderness of this alien world. We live in the age of the soft reboot. Old franchises are being resurrected left and right, given a new coat of paint, being rejigged and retooled for a newer, younger audience, whilst attempting to not alienate the old fans by tossing out all the old continuity and stories they grew attached to. The spirit of these franchises has proven elusive, however. Star Wars The Force Awakens had the tone spot on, but the hollow repeat of past events made it all feel a bit token, despite there being some wonderful characters and great ideas underneath the plot point recycling, while The Last Jedi went in the complete opposite direction, aggressively dismantling the Star Wars mythos in a manner that seemed to alienate as many people as it enthralled. The JJ...
I don't think it dismantled the mythos. I just think it threw it out the door. I mean, when you're talking about dismantling something, you're looking at the lore that's been built up and just sort of slowly chipping away or whatever. And all Ryan Johnson did with The Last Jedi was just say, oh, we're not going to use that. Nope, we're throwing this away. Nope, there's no theme here. Nothing has any value. And it's kind of like a kid giving a kid a hammer and having him just run around the house. That's not storytelling. That's just wasting everyone's time. If he actually built something with that hammer, that would be another story. And we could see it. But we didn't get that. And people were just happy they saw explosions and dogfights in space and whatever. So, and even that was pretty limited too.
Sorry, idea just popped into my little brain. One of the ideas that I kind of stole this from, like full on blatantly stole this, was like, if let's say Alec was going to be the antagonist of the game, you could sort of have it in terms of, Sam was basically like Vigil in the sense of it was starting to turn off pods, and Pathfinder was trying to, or Ryder was trying to like prevent that from happening. So he went rogue, and unfortunately though went to the Angara and just started attacking them to basically steal resources off of them to try and keep Sam from shutting down the pods, basically. And that could kind of go like, there's an actual motivation for Alec to actually be doing these things. He's trying to save people, but just doing it in a very militant kind of, the ends justify the means kind of way.
See, that would be a thematic representation of the trilogy, meaning that AI is in control of us. And that would be even like, how fiercely guarded was that ending, so that AI and the struggle between AI and organics was a real thing. So they brought that with them to the Andromeda galaxy, and BioWare's like, yep, this is it. We're so furious over the ending, we're going to keep going with the theme. And I'd be like, you know what? If you tell a good story, I'm with you. If you honestly believe that in the future AI will always dominate us in any context, then you gotta keep up that belief, man. And if you got the time, the gumption, the balls, and the money to do it, every goddamn Mass Effect game from now till the end is gonna be about, you make some cute AI like a puppy, and he's gonna kill your entire species. Like that's pretty much it. You gotta just completely turn your AI into monsters. But adorable monsters. So you have the choice of saving them or destroying humanity, because they're so cute.
Abrams' Star Trek movies are something of a halfway house between the traditional reboot and this new kind, with a new continuity and a new universe with younger versions of the original cast, but they still had old Spock around playing a fairly key role in the plot and character arcs. Their merits as stories aside, both of these represent somewhat clumsy attempts to have their continuity cake and eat it too, so it comes as some surprise that Mass Effect Andromeda, in a medium often looked down upon for its storytelling chops compared to film, manages a more elegant and thoughtful soft reboot than either of these two franchise juggernauts combined.
Really? Well, you're comparing Star Wars, the new series, and Star Trek, both initiated by J.J. Abrams, which is like saying, hey, this book by this not so great author and this other book by the same author, well, this other guy did a better job. And you're like, okay, well, your standards aren't exactly changed there. Geez, how do you argue this? It's like you have to show that this is better than that and that. And showing this scene especially is not the way to do it. So
yeah, and using J.J. Abrams, who basically made Cadet Kirk into a captain in like the span of a week, is just like, oh, you can separate Kirk from the Enterprise. The Enterprise had 3 captains. Was it 2 or 3 captains before Kirk actually got in charge? There was Pike and there was another one. I've forgotten his name now.
Yeah, the first or second episode of the original series. Don't recall. Yeah.
But it's like the Enterprise is actually being in construction, but it's actually been in service for quite a long time. I mean, it's like an aircraft carrier. It's going to be around for at least 30. These things are built to last. It's not like iPhones. Constitution Class C, get rid of it. Constitution Class D, hey, next year.
Well, I'm not grasping this idea, comparing it to other franchises. So, soft reboot? I don't know. It is a reboot of sorts, but it's still a continuation from the timeline. It's not a prequel. You're not rebooting the universe. You're just taking the elements and you're re-envisioning them, but the timeline's still the same. It's just 600 years in the future. But everything's been cryogly frozen, so there's no advancement. That'd be hilarious if you left the AI on the ship for 600 years to develop. It's like, hey, look, here's this new gun we invented 400 years ago. Here you go. What do you think? That would have been like, oh, thanks, AI. I guess you guys are awesome. That would have been great. And they were like lost their mind through the entire time, and then they start taking over the rest of the ship, and like you said, turning off systems and turning pods off. It's like, oh my god. That would have been awesome, but nope. Got to fight some stone boneheads.
Well, that's the thing. It's like Mass Effect's always been a kind of I guess one of the major cruxes is a race against time. Obviously, a Mass Effect 1, it's trying to prevent Siren from getting to the conduit, which obviously opened up the Citadel, letting in the Reapers. This one could have been a race against time in terms of stopping the AI from basically going into priority critical mode and just start killing people off, because you're under the assumption that you are the last of your kind.
Yes, it seems as if Sam is just sort of like, I'm an AI, I have a job, I have no evolution, I'm just here as a controller device. I get input, I give you output, that's it. Whereas Edie was more of a realized character. The Geth were obviously a hive consciousness. They had multiple processes running, all sorts of things they were doing, they were planning. So yeah, we don't have that level of sophistication, and that's fine. You can do that with basic elements of science fiction, but you have to give us something worth listening to. You have to. Sam is not a character. Sam is literally a machine, and he doesn't really have, or it doesn't really have, any stakes. It's just there. It gets stolen as a MacGuffin. You're like, oh crap, we gotta get Sam back. You get him back. He's like, oh, it's Sam. Yay, he can do everything again. It's and then magically so can you without Sam. It's like, what? So it's hard to grasp these elements unless you know how to write them. And when you're talking about AI and AI connected cybernetically to people, that has to be a big element. And unfortunately, it was so much of an element that Sam ended up becoming the plot device of the entire story. So
this actually could have been there was a game called which was a I think it was done by the people who did Amnesia Dark Descent. But anyway, it's about the idea of you're basically a robot, or you're basically a robot inhabiting a human body, but you've got the memories of a person from the past, and you're trying to sort of, you know, keep humanity alive in some shape or form. Because basically, a meteorite hit the Earth in like 2120 or something like that, and the only people that managed to survive were actually people that were under the ocean. And when you actually realize yourself, it's like, oh, I'm not actually alive. I'm actually just this meat body with literally just a robotic head drilled into it, you know. And that could have basically been Sam imprinting memories of Ryder to kind of give some semblance of self, you know, some kind of purpose rather than just simply being an automaton.
Oh, that would have been a brilliant reveal near the halfway point or near the end, where it's like, no, 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 everyone died, and I only have like a few people left in cryo, and I've been imprinting ideas onto your brain to make that you think you're Ryder, so that the mission could complete. And geez, you know what? We're rewriting the story as we're speaking, just to
Yeah, sorry.
make it more interesting, just because like he's putting so much value and faith into the comparison between popular stories like Star Trek and Star Wars. It's like, no, Andromeda really isn't that great.
When Alec Ryder passes the mantle of Pathfinder on to his child, it's more than just giving the player the title they'll use for the rest of the game. Alec Ryder, as Mass Effect 1, is symbolically passing on the torch of the series in a more subtle way than anyone could have expected. See, Pathfinder isn't just a title.
Off a cliff.
That's what it felt like. Here you go. Into the dumpster. Up you go.
Makes you special is that you and your AI buddy, Sam, are symbiotically linked in a way that mirrors the relationship between the player and the game designer. While you may
What? The player and the game designer are symbolically linked the same way Sam and Ryder are.
Wow, Oculus Rift has really gone up in the world.
Wow. I guess it's some augmented reality stuff they saved for the PS5 we're going to get later. It's going to be the...
Damn you, Google Glasses.
Yeah, it's going to be the Mass Effect Andromeda extended Google cut, where they just sort of they buy out the license for Google Glass because Google Glass doesn't care anymore. There you go.
make all the complex decisions and emotional judgments that an AI like Sam just isn't equipped for yet. Sam grants you the mechanics you need to defeat your enemies, explore the world, and generally survive and thrive within the Helios cluster.
Yes, Sam does everything.
I'd argue that the fact that Sam was originally bonded with Alec, aka Mass Effect 1, means that he represents the design philosophy of that game, and that you, as the player writer, are carrying those ideas into this new frontier.
Okay, so now we have Sam represents the designer, the game designers of both Mass Effect games, or all Mass Effect games, and now that they're being bonded to Child Rider, it's now Andromeda's game design.
Is this like one of those abominable creations that the collectors did with humans? Like, kill me.
Here's this bloated GUI with everything from Mass Effect. Here you go.
It's like shambling around.
I have too many protocols in my brain. Do I use biotics or guns or this or that? Like, I can't figure. Okay.
And this is all just in the first mission. So, that's all well and good, but what you want to know is how the space orcs fit into this, right? Surely there's nothing more to them than the generic bad guys they initially appear to be at first glance. I mean, just look at this guy. He even looks like Corypheus. I bet no one can tell them apart at the annual BioWare villain conventions, not least because they both have a void where their personality should be. When we discuss the Kett Empire, it's important to distinguish them from this guy, their leader in the Helios cluster, the Archon. The Archon
Yeah, because the Kett Empire has such a personality outside of the Archon's personality. Which one's more vapid? I don't know. It's one or the other. I do like that he's making self-deprecating humor with Corypheus and BioWare in general, because the villains are oh so special these past 10 years of... Jeez. After 2012, it's like, okay, thanks, Harbinger. You're Mr. Talkative there. Thanks for giving us a brand new Deus Ex villain. Now we have Corypheus, who's just lovely. And they have the Archon, who's just bad guy number 4. Just like, okay.
The major difference, obviously, is that you kill the Archon, whereas Corypheus is like, I want to go to the Fade, and your character's like, all right, bye. It's like, wait, what?
I could kill you, but, I'll just give him what he wants.
Serves as the game's antagonist in a more traditional sense, and he sucks. He's a completely generic pain.
Okay, so the character sucks, but why Mass Effect Andromeda is secretly good. So I'm gonna go with the idea that he's gonna say he's so bad he's good. I think that's what he's getting at, but I could be totally wrong. We'll find out.
By numbers villain, he has barely any personality beyond being a dick. The only good thing about him is how he feeds into the larger metaphor of the Kett. He's a complete nothing.
Okay, so he's good because he's going to be a larger metaphor for the, not him as an enemy, but for the enemy as an idea, meaning the rest of the force, the opposing force, which is very odd. It's like saying, well, Darth Vader represents the Empire. It's like, well, not really. Darth Vader represents the dark side of the Force and being evil and being a badass because that's part of his character. He just happens to be aligned with the Empire. He could probably make his own empire or his own army because he's so intimidating and powerful and has resources to do so. So, not really feeling this philosophy of a metaphor for enemy.
It's a super metaphor.
It's beyond my understanding. That's definitely what's going on.
Definitely. It's like, I can understand that, the metaphor of Corypheus is basically just the embodiment of the Kett, a completely soulless clone, or they are basically just indoctrinated creatures, just doing this one thing over and over again. And occasionally one has a bright idea and kind of goes, let's do something slightly different. It's like, oh, he speaks in sentences. We must follow him.
If you want to go with that, imagine that the Archon said zip. He said absolutely no lines of dialogue. Well, he's a metaphor for the soulless, flaccid, empty husk of life that is the opposing force. You're like, yes. We don't know what they want.
They could have actually kept it alien in terms of how in XCOM, it's like you don't really know why these aliens are doing what they're doing.
Right.
It's just stop. That would have been better. It's just they just see you as nothing. They just see you as something to be removed. Because I remember actually that's one of the conversations I had. Was it Tan? I forgot her name now. My face is tired, lady.
Right.
She basically just says that they treat you as an infection, just waiting to be purged, you just to be disinfected from the area. It's like they wouldn't be talking to you if they see you as bacteria. Sovereign said hello, but then went fuck off.
Yeah, having the idea of an opposing force or an alien opposing force, like in XCOM, where we can judge the aliens by their actions, and everything else is propaganda. And they sort of adapt to their surroundings. Say, okay, how do we get the humans on our side? Solve this problem. Give them food. Give them medicine, etc. Say, oh, aliens are pretty good. Yeah, because you're judging them by their actions, not by their philosophies. No one has any idea what the aliens want because they don't talk until we play further into the game and then we reveal that there's these elder aliens who have this sickness and they're trying to cure it and by doing so they'll destroy humanity. So that would have been a mystery, and that would have been as alien as it gets, because that's how you do mystery. You keep things up in the air, you have little tidbits of clues, and you make us realize what is going on. Kind of how the Cthulhu mythos is this big, weird, strange, scary, but mysterious fear that our brains would be shattered if we ever learned about their existence and how they think and what they could do. And once you start revealing things, like once, oh, look, there's a Harbinger. He's standing right there. Okay. The mystery's gone. The magic is gone. And you can't just suddenly say, oh, that was like a peon of Harbinger. That's not really, that's just a version of him. You're like, what? Wait a second. He just makes 2-kilometer tall versions of himself to prance around on a planet and say stupid shit to confuse the crap out of us.
Cardboard cutouts.
Yeah, his version of a cardboard cutout, exactly. And is that like, that would be interesting. I'd be like, okay, that's really freaking weird, but it would be better than that's all we got, right? So they have to have what's called then depth. So you have layers of meaning that's showcased in very small ways, and then slightly smaller ways, and then slightly bigger ways, and you just keep going and going and going. And full reveals, I am the Kett leader, I want X, and then that's it. You're like, oh.
I have 8 nostrils.
It's just very boring. It's very there's no depth. There's no value. There's no hook. There's no reason for me to care about killing this guy aside from he's a mook. He's a schlub. He's a guy to prance on when he's dead. And it's like you have no sympathy. You have no identity. Like you have to identify with your characters, whether they're good, bad, villains, protagonists, doesn't matter who. You have to identify some reason, whether it's humanity, a plot, a fault, a failing, a virtue, like anything. He could be smoking his ass off. He could be smoking with his ass off. I don't care. Give me something to identify with this dude, aside from him being a retarded Teletubby baby who doesn't know what he wants in the grand scheme of things, aside from getting Meridian. I must get Meridian. I want the power thing.
Series that gave us memorable antagonists like Saren, Casey Hudson, and the Elusive Man, he sticks out like a sore thumb. Thankfully, the Kett themselves are a hell of a lot more interesting. Now, while I've tried to avoid specific spoilers where I can up to this point, it's pretty much impossible to really talk about the Kett.
Sorry?
Yeah. The eye tracking on Ryder then, it was like,
Oh, yeah.
she was like trying to follow a fly around the room, you know? You're like, sorry, it just bothers me the frick out of me.
Okay, Jane, Miss Animator Jane, can you like make it so she's really excited, but she doesn't know where to look, so she's really like nervous and like, how do I do that, sir? I don't know. Imagine she's like looking at something but doesn't want to look at it, and it's really fast moving. It's like, okay, let's do that. Great emotion. Thanks, Ryder.
Without giving away some of the game's biggest surprises. If you haven't played the game yet and want to have a fresh experience, skip to this timecode so you don't get completely spoiled. When the Andromeda Initiative first arrives in Helios, their first contact is not against the Remnant, the robotic leftovers of an ancient civilization known as the Jardan, or even their children, the Angara. Rather, they first encountered these ugly space goblins, and pretty soon after encountered the business end of their guns. This scene, in which you must use shotgun diplomacy on the first aliens you encounter in this new galaxy, is one of the most criticised aspects of the game. From the more technical plot questions like why wasn't the Initiative prepared for an alien species that wouldn't be able to understand them, to the rather ugly gun-toting picture it paints of the new arrivals in Andromeda.
This is actually a good point, because you wanted to have the concept of what First Contact was, what the mission was, if there were other life out there. Are you going to be dominators? Are you going to just come to a planet and take it over? Or do you want to coexist? Do you want to negotiate, etc.? Like there has to be some sort of philosophy and a standard of communication with new life. That would have been great. That would have been like the Prime Directive version of the Alliance or the Mass Effect universe. We didn't get any of that. We got Ryder walking up and getting shot at, and then he shoots back, and it's over.
Yeah, I'm trying to think now of like maybe the bad guy should have been like another alien species rather than the Op 4, the main opposing force in Andromeda, and they should have been someone that you can kind of go, okay, like they're obviously scrounging for materials, but you're like, I just want my buddy. You can take what you want. I'm gonna go, or you can kind of go like, no, that's my shit. Take it off, and then you blow them away, or something like that. It's
trying to. Yeah, I'm looking at other sci-fi examples, and the Star Trek one is the first one that comes to mind. But you can take a look at Firefly. Like, what's the mentality behind that sort of story, or the characters there? They're just trying to get by. They're sort of gray. They're not good or bad. They are, trying to make a buck in the process. So it's very practical, very pragmatic. And in this case, they just can't communicate. So to them, it probably doesn't matter whether it's First Contact or not. Your ship is down. Your buddy is down. They're holding you at gunpoint. What do you do? And there's no protocol. There's no training. There's nothing. And you're like, oh, come on, guys. This is the best you can do?
Liam, you're the crisis response. We're in a crisis.
Oh,
Respond.
God. The Liam character. Take Jacob, water him down as much as possible, and add soccer. That's it. That's like...
Yeah, his only defining characteristic is that he's British. You know, it's like good job there, but
He's from a certain part of the UK. It's like, wow.
he's actually, funnily enough, I actually recognized the character, the voice actor, because he was on a soap opera called EastEnders, and he was actually on a children's TV show called Old Jack. So it's like I'm just like, how the hell did you go from that to this, mate? Because honestly, you were best off doing the previous stuff. It was on Holby City as well, actually. So that was a hospital drama.
Yeah, I'm not saying
So
these guys aren't talented, but the lines they're giving, the characters they're representing, just oof, rough.
Scene has been used to paint Mass Effect Andromeda as a game that tacitly supports colonialism, and taking this scene out of context with the rest of the game and giving everything else it has to offer a completely surface level examination could return that reading, but
I wouldn't say it's that sophisticated, honestly, that because there's no protocol to how to talk to aliens, that suddenly the Andromeda Initiative represents colonialism. That's a little. I mean,
yeah, well, that was a thing that was in some kind of controversy where some Tumblr is basically just went, "Oh, you're supporting colonialism because you're colonizing." It's like, yes, you are alleged last of your kind. Of course, you're going to try and, you're basically refugees, you're space refugees
right.
from the B arc.
That makes more sense. But colonialism implies an entire like political thing you want to do, an economic solution. You want to trade. You want to either dominate or destroy the opposing natives, or you want to spread religion. You want to do all these things. In space, that's a little bit stranger, and you're going to have to really explain that. Unless you're not a historian, if you have no idea what you're talking about, like it sounds like, yeah, a Tumblrina, just making up a word or using a word that they heard in history class one year, and say, "Oh, this is appropriation of xenobiology and Western or Eastern Western political struggles." It's like, no, it's a guy who can't talk to another guy, and they start shooting at each other. That's all it is.
I think that if you dig a little beneath the surface, you'll find a game that does have thoughtful things to say about colonialism, and those things aren't particularly kind. Now, colonialism is a pretty loaded word.
Okay, the music and the
Oops.
gameplay. Like, I don't know what game exactly this is. Probably it's one of the.
It looks like, is it Crusader King?
I was about to say, what's the other one? Oh crap, I can't remember the name. But it's essentially, yeah, you start off as a king and you marry each other off and what have you. But the music is Chronopolis from Chrono Cross, and I know he used Last Jedi music before, but just that beat in my head, just I remember that song. So yeah, I don't remember what game this is, but we're now on the topic of colonialism, which has nothing to do with Andromeda. You're refugees in space. That's all.
But it's like this idea of you're colonizing other space worlds, but it's like, but yeah, but they've been colonizing other worlds. So yeah, it's not like the planet's going, "Oi, get off my land!" Yeah.
Yeah, you're two opposing forces, and you all want the same thing, or you're all in the same area of land. So it's like, yeah, it's like the British and the what do you call the Yanks? What do you call the colonists that founded America? They're sort of fighting over land.
European settlers, basically.
Yeah. Okay.
And there's going to be a lot of definitions out there that conflict and contradict one another. For the purposes of this argument, and for the sake of brevity, I'm going to define colonialism as material/cultural control and exploitation of a country or people. Despite the initial...
Okay, that's not entirely wrong, but it's not necessarily exploitative. It could be peaceful. It could be coexistive. It could be warlike. It could be all sorts of things. You could enslave them. You could... you can give them food. You can give them malaria. You can give them all sorts of things. So, and I don't think there's any economic solution to, at least that we hear of, to the whole colonizing, making a foundry, making some resources or tools or gear that you can buy and sell. There's no mention of that.
And that's actually something I was watching one of the playthroughs, and they do actually still use the credit system. It's like, no, you'd be using barter system. It's like giving a flipping Aboriginal, like, from like 200 years ago, a $2 note or whatever, $2 note, a buck basically. And it's like, this means nothing. This
Right.
is just paper. It's like you need to give him something more substantial, but they still refer back to this credit system. It's like it wouldn't work with an alien species that's outside of your economic system
Yeah,
because there is no economic system.
exactly. You can't just say we'll give you gold. It's like what's gold? Why would I want that? Or what is your version of fiat currency? It's like we have this thing called credits. It's like what does that represent? It's like nothing. We can't represent it to anything that you've got here, unless they're talking about raw elements or
Yeah.
raw chemicals or any kind of rare earth metals or things that would be in value that'd be like, well, we don't really need that mountain over there and it's full of gold. I mean, you could use it, right? It's like, yeah, can we take that from you? They're like, oh, no, 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 we'll sell it to you. You can mine it yourself, but we'll sell it to you for whatever. It'd be like, oh, okay. But it would be what they would want. They would, like, you would have to give them something of value that they would buy. So, yeah, whatever their form of currency is, whatever they could trade, it's it's basic stuff. When you form a colony, a country, you establish your own rules and laws, bartering systems, what has value on the marketplace, your own marketplace first off, not necessarily an
Yes.
exchange. Like you wouldn't have a stock exchange day one, but you would have businesses of some sort, and then the business would get investors, and those investors would say, okay, I don't want to start giving you 20,000 cows. I'm going to start giving you something to represent that, and that would be currency, which takes a while to develop.
Yeah, I think that would have been far more interesting because the thing about the only other species that you really talk to in terms of friendly space is the Angaran, but they're a resistance group, so they're not going to be a massive economic powerhouse. It's like everybody else is like just eking by because there's only you and the Angara. There's no one else. Which actually kind of leads me to the whole idea of I don't think they should have added in the other species of the Andromeda crew. They should have been introducing more alien species. It should have just been about the human colony ship than anything else. I know we like meeting the Asari and Solarians, but considering what they did to them, I was like, leave them alone, please.
Well, I thought if they're going to have this focus on war, and if he's saying it's colonialism, I would imagine that they would be trading in guns and weapons and tech because they're fighting against the common enemy. And it would be micromanaging all your resources to say, okay, we're going to make ships, we're going to make guns or artillery or whatever. It'd be like, okay, that's the economy. That's what's at high value. You guys like because that was one of the things, the weapons that we saw in the trailers. There's different types of guns with different types of ammo, and I think the Milky Way ammo had like slugs or that sort of stuff. Then the the remnants had energy weapons, and the Angara or whomever had
Plasma.
whatever. Yeah, there was three kinds of styles of guns. Like,
Yeah, there was kinetic, energy, and plasma.
yeah, it sounds like one of those old Trade Wars games from bulletin boards where you'd have three types of resources, and they were just organics, tech, and farm or something else. And that would be the constant rate. Like things would go up and down in price, and that's where you always wanted to get one of those three resources, and you had limited capacity in your shuttles or your ships. And that would be that. And you'd be like, okay, now we know the value of things. We don't have to go nitty gritty with every single gun being a different price. You can go generic and say, okay, this is an organic resource, so oxygen, this and that, biomaterial, etc. And that would be it. You have a simple trading system based on those three resources or three resource types.
If you were to add in the dialogue system, then you could either do it in a way of you could either be exploitative or overly generous, and each one of those two things would be an opposite. Like if you're exploitative to them, then they obviously end up turning on you. But if you're overly generous, then they'll be overly dependent on you, and they'll be they'll just think that they're going to get things easier. So when things start going rough and you can't provide the demand that they need, it's like, oh, we've just completely screwed themselves out there. You
Well,
know?
that's a good way of cornering the market. Once you establish a cheap line of resources, and then you go, oh, we don't have any more, or it's very limited. We're gonna jack up the prices now, even though you still have because you're a monopoly. You have everything. They've never seen this stuff from anyone else, and no one else is selling. That would have been brilliant. That would have been all these plot lines of how you manipulate the market. And okay, now we're talking about actually building a colony through finances because this is how it would work. you would have a marketplace. And the speed upon which you would build your colony would determine on the amount of resources you've got. And if everything was just, building a colony, not building an economy, then your point would be like, well, I'm just here to trade to get resources to make houses, to make buildings, to make defenses, to make water purifications, whatever. And that would be the point. And then they would be independent, and they're alive. We've established a base, or a city, or a town, or a bunker, or whatever the hell you wanted to build. And that's how you do it. That's how you tell these stories.
Within the system of the initiative itself, you'd have to have some kind of internal currency system, but it can't be one of a standard stock exchange. It would have to be a kind of, here's your weekly allowance, because you're doing these kind of jobs, therefore you're entitled to these. Everybody's entitled to food, shelter, medical care, things like that, because obviously we need you alive. But you'll have, like, let's say, a requisition fund, which would be like, okay, now you can buy extra things, or things that would be creature comforts to you.
You would essentially be the governor maker. You would be the guy who'd go around and say, listen, I'm going to make a colony. I need a governor. I need a mayor. I need a sheriff. I need all these things. I'm going to make this. And I'm in charge until I put the right people in the right locations. Because that's the job of the Pathfinder. I'm here to give you the guidance, and I have all the resources. I have all the knowledge. I got a freaking AI in my brain, and I'm going to make everything work. And you're basically building an RTS, or you're building a system for an art. I know it sounds a little bizarre, but you're still doing a lot of micromanagement or 4X style of gameplay. But you have to. I know it's tough to do in this kind of game because it's a third-person adventure. So you would still have to have some mechanic for it, and even in the lightest way. So very, very small interference. Oh, we have 100 units of uranium. Now we can build something that can manufacture that, or who knows. So
yeah, you'd have like standard characteristics of like security, diplomacy, scientific, and mining, or some kind of logistician. Basically, it's like, so when you put that person there, they'll have an effect on that area. But if, let's say, you put a logistician in an area where there's heavy Kett activity, you may have the problem of not enough security because the person isn't security enabled or security minded, so you may end up losing that colony. So you'd be like, oh, right, we've just lost 200 people.
Yeah, exactly. So you either do a full-fledged 4X, or you combine it with multiple genres of game, the way that Mass Effect 3 should have been, because you're fighting an entire war. It's not just third-person shooter anymore. You have to have more gameplay elements. You have to have more mechanics. You have to have a larger scope of what you're doing. So
you just basically be like on the map itself. You just be seeing a little bubble saying that says something's happened at this place, and you get like a standard start message that basically just says like a rating from, let's say, 1 to 5, and obviously 5's good, 1's dead, and there you go. It's nice and simple. You're like, oh right, that colony is performing adequately now. And then as time progresses on, it might falter, and you might have to assign more resources to it or whatever. Just something to do in the meantime, just something to break up the third person shooting, basically.
Yeah, and then you have to run in there because there's no sheriff, or the sheriff can't handle it. They call for help, and you run in there and you take care of the problem. Boom. Yes, this is how you do it, guys. This is how you make an Andromeda game.
Assumptions of the initiative, the Kett aren't actually natives of the Helios cluster. They're from outside, just like you. The Archon isn't even the supreme leader of the Kett. As his name would imply, he's closer to the captain of the Kett expeditionary force into the Helios cluster, given very colonial orders by the true leader of the Empire. Bring everything and everyone in the Helios cluster under the control of the Kett, for the glory of the Emperor. They're basically a traditional European imperial force, except more green and rocky and, well, actually about the same amount of evil. Furthering this comparison, as you progress through the main quest, the game reveals schism within the Kett's ranks, as the Archon begins to cut off ties with the mainland empire and hoard the Remnant's tech for himself and his own. Notably, the Archon's obsession with the Remnant is considered downright perverse by other Kett, demonstrating the depths of their xenophobia. Later on, you're even approached by one of the Kett loyal to the Empire, who proposes a temporary alliance to deal with the Archon, one of the game's more interesting choices that probably could have led to some really interesting consequences in future Andromeda games. Shame we'll never see those consequences actually play out, huh? So,
This should have happened right at the beginning. This should have been the constant struggle throughout the story, that you're introduced to all these alien races and they have all these dimensions, and you got to figure out which faction you have to deal with. That would be your standard RPG stuff, but it's not even a big thing in the story. It happens near the end anyway. So
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to remember now if the Archon's got such a fascination with the remnant technology, then they should have taken cues from DS9's episode called To the Death, where you and Cisco have to team up to get rid of some rebel Jem'Hadar that have got one of the old gateways. And basically, if you have access to these gateways, it allows you to basically deploy anywhere within the galaxy. It's like, oh, that makes them an incredibly formidable threat, even though they're a small force. It's like the remnant should have had their own version of mass relay, so they could have had their own jump gate system. Could still be based on the Mass Effect principle, but it's just a more planet to planet rather than a solar to solar system kind of thing, or sectors or whatever.
yeah, same idea with Stargate. There's always a control near the edge of a Stargate so that military forces can take care of things. That would be the idea. Just anywhere in the galaxy where these gates are.
Yeah, I think so. I think a Stargate would be more apt, but just keep it within the Mass Effect world, so it still is a mass relay. It's just a different type of relay. It's not as advanced, so it's only got like a limited range. You have to go to a prime.
Yeah,
one, which
a lot
obviously
of primary and secondary reels would be different, but you're thinking like along the scale of like a conduit or a series of conduit relays, which are very they're all primary, so they all point to each other.
the Kett are an allegory for a colonial empire. But in my absolute favourite of Mass Effect Andromeda's sci-fi ideas, the colonial coding of the Kett goes far deeper than just making them the standard imperial dickbag culture that's pretty common for sci-fi baddies. The full picture of the Kett doesn't come into focus until the player reaches Vold and discovers the Kett temple there. Here, we learn the true depths of the Kett's colonialism. Long ago, the Kett gave up the icky, sticky business of traditional propagation and began furthering their species through a kind of technological ritual known as exaltation. In temples like this one, native populations are brainwashed through insidious and thoroughly creepy cultural indoctrination.
But isn't this even dumber than just going through the nitty gritty of sex? Like, you literally have to take people from their race or culture, indoctrinate them for God knows how long, then make a serum that has to be compatible with their specific biology, go through all the rigmarole of religious ceremony and crap, inject them, hope they survive it, and then you have one trooper. Like, it's just stupid.
Yeah, why not just capture them and then breed them to be more obedient?
Yeah, just say, okay,
have a culture. Yeah,
you do what you do, but we control you, and when we need you, you do what we want. Like, do that.
Yeah, I think that would have been that would show a more insidious nature in terms of, once again, that's like the Dominion. Like, they'll have like their shock troopers, like their version of Jem'Hadar, but there's still an alliance of a multiracial alliance. It's like, oh right, these people aren't all bad. They do come in a kind of peaceful manner, but they've just got the military aspect, and we're just facing the brunt of the military aspect because we're opposing them. That's why we're getting the shit kicked out of us.
Well, it's another silly thing that all of these guys, these mooks that get transformed, go into brainless cannon fodder that you kill instantly. So it's like, wow, great military regime you've just built up there.
They only cost 25 minerals. It's like the Marines out of Star. It's like, you think all that work and all that effort just to make one Marine, and he's like, yeah, he's gone in like 2 seconds.
Well, that's why Marines are so OP, because they cost so less. They cost so little.
Yeah.
Until they become completely subservient to the Kett. Then, in a ritual that is drenched in as much religious and cultural symbolism as it is with nanomachine bullshit, the genetic structure of the unfortunate victim is rewritten until they become...
Did they ever explain how the hell they're floating in the air?
No.
I don't think so.
Mass Effect fields, I guess.
But they don't know what Mass Effect fields are.
No, because the Kett don't actually use Mass Effect fields. So they just float. They can just float.
They can just float. Partially naked man can just float.
Kett. The vast majority of Kett you face in the game are, in fact, exalted Helios natives, Angarans and Milky Way denizens alike. You only encounter one or two pureblood Kett in the entire game, and even then, it's not explicitly stated that these are pureblood Kett, and may in fact be an exalted species from somewhere else in the galaxy.
Why aren't these in like incubation chambers with like pipes and all sorts of crazy things?
It's
like,
so inefficient. It's so silly. It's such a spectacle, and it's just like, is this really how they do it once every hour for one guy? They have these giant two vials they jam into your chest, and it's like this violent reaction. Shouldn't this take like months?
Just imagine like the fucking Primus is there going like, right, we need troopers quickly. Yes, I bless you in the name of the Archon. Yes, I bless you in the name of the Archon. He's just doing it really quickly.
Pump these things out. No, we have to increase production.
It's like just throwing them on the conveyor belt as they're arriving on the ground. Throwing guns at them.
Everything about this scene is purely for dramatic purposes. There is very little to no scientific or believable hard science engineering or like, it's not a process that was looked upon by, okay, what's the end result? What do we need? We need to produce soldiers, or we need to produce people. It's very poorly done. So if you're saying Andromeda is good in this context, you'd have to see it from the dramatic angle, not from the science fiction or the sci-fi, not even the religious angle, because this ceremony is dumb. There's very little symbolism behind it. They go through all these months and months of work to brainwash you, when all they gotta, like, if turning you into a Kett just, by injecting you with stuff, why are you bothering brainwashing people? You just inject it into them. Done. Who cares? They're mooks.
Yeah, just release the nano swarm amongst the civilian populace, and then they'll turn.
What do you need their brain for? They're soldiers who listen to you as soon as you inject this crap into them. They're not going to be like, oh, I'm not going to listen to you anymore. It's like, if that is ever a scenario, it never happens. If they can rewrite your biology, I don't think the brain is that far removed.
It's not like, say, like the Borg, where they're just like augmented, and they're just like they are just literal drones. And then when you start to take away the pieces, it's like, oh, that's a person from the initiative, or you can actually see that. These are just trying to be like the dragon's teeth off of Mass Effect with the husks, really, just more fancy. But another twist as well is just that Sovereign didn't actually have any armies. He actually had to borrow the gaff. So yeah, it's like husks were basically used as a shock value than anything else. People walk up curiously, and then suddenly the husk runs up towards them and detonates.
Yeah.
That was the original one. They don't just hit you like in Mass Effect 2.
Well, in Mass Effect 3, they're now people, so you can't say that. That would be.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, sorry. Hi, Steve. Oh, guys.
How's it going? How's the wife?
Existence is pain.
Every moment is suffering.
All right, have a good one. You can't kill yourself because Overlord demand.
I'll believe the green. Bye. Okay.
Species rewritten by the Kett will turn out slightly differently, but the Kett genetics always completely overpower the original forms, to the point where they're practically unrecognizable. Exaltation also seems to turn its victims into stereotypes the Kett have for the race in question. Late in the game, you discover Krogans being exalted, and while Krogans can indeed be violent brutes, they're still a far cry from the hulking, mindless monstrosities the Kett make them into. The Kett Empire is not just a colonial force. They are a culture so inherently colonial that colonialism has been written into their very genes. But what about the initiative?
No. Political ideologies or methods of taking over a culture or a people is not genetic. It is a tactic. It is how you deal with politics. It is how you deal with opposition and economics and cultural aspects as well. So it's not genetic.
After all, it hardly makes the game less colonial if it's simply about the nice colonists versus the evil colonists. Initially,
it could have been. That would have been interesting.
A lot of the imagery, language, and actions of the Andromeda Initiative does portray them to be a colonial force. They are...
No, it doesn't. It portrays them as, oh, you want to go on this really crazy boat ride 600 years in the future where you get to, recreate Eden on some alien planet? I guess. There's no mention of them, taking over the natives and shooting them up and stealing all their resources.
Yeah, that was on the to-do list.
Yeah, it was like, come to Andromeda, steal from everyone, become gods. It's like, no, never happened.
Yeah, come to Andromeda, kill all the natives. I'm sorry, what was that? Yeah, you can have a new home in here. No, the last bit that you just... no, there was nothing else there,
I was just reading the card. I think that got cut off. Yeah, that was probably an error.
Yeah, sorry, that's a typo.
First draft. Fine
surface
print.
level, colonists, by definition, settling on uncharted land far, far away from home with the intention of creating an extension of their existing society back in the Milky Way. They do not come with the intention of subsuming into Andromeda's cultural norms or submitting to any existing power structure of the galaxy.
Yeah, but there's no mention of it of not doing that or doing that because there's no story. There's no how do we get from A to B, and then when we get to B, what do we do? It just there's nothing. There's no first contact scenario. There's no negotiation protocol. There's nothing. You just are there, and the story happens. And because the Kett were colonialists, therefore we are? No. That doesn't happen. Now, if the story was about making a city or founding a new culture or founding a new society, then we could say, okay, what are the actions you can take in forming that society? Because when you get to one of the first planets you land on, or I can't remember the story, but there's all this equipment just lying around, and it's up to yeah, they were just left, and it's up to Ryder to figure out what happened, turn the power back on, and discover the vaults. And it's like, okay, well, they've obviously landed here before, and they set up shop, and then something happened. So whoever was here is either dead or they never were here. And that's never, it's never a theme. It's never a theme. It's never a component of the Andromeda Initiative. And it should have been.
Bring with them their biases and beliefs, their cultures, and an expectation of independence. For example, one of the first things we hear about happening was the Nexus Uprising, an event elaborated upon in a book I haven't read, wherein a civil war aboard the Nexus ultimately leads to a contingent of the population being exiled and the Krogans abandoning the initiative. Even before the players arrived in Andromeda, the initiative's foreign cultures etched upon the Helios cluster, in a manner that certainly does seem colonial. Moreover, the game directly draws comparisons between the remnant, robotic leftovers of the true natives of the Helios cluster, and the many exotic ancient civilizations that have been plundered by European colonists in the past. The triangular design much of the remnant architecture uses suggests societies such as ancient Egypt and Mesoamerican cultures like the Maya and the Aztec.
Triangular? That's an octagon. It's either an octagon or what's the other one now? Hexagon.
Well,
it's like, come on, it's not triangle.
Well, I think he's talking about the symbols of the vaults, but even then, you can't argue that basic geometric shapes like a frickin' polygon are not universal, and therefore they're part of some underlying culture that has been appropriated or stolen. It's like, no, that's just math and geometry. I mean, if you want to talk geodesic domes or certain styles of architecture, or maybe you could look at the some of the tech here, maybe the human style, maybe it was borrowed, who knows? But there's no mention of like progenitor tech, the
Maya
architecture of it being reminiscent of another's culture. It doesn't, what do you... I don't remember exactly, ancient Mayan architecture influencing modern Mexican or South American or any other styles of architecture. It's kind of like comparing ancient civilizations to today. You're like, well, no. There's no parallel. And when you're talking about especially a futuristically high-tech one, there are specific reasons why such structures exist, why such technology exists, why architecture has a certain shape and size and color and is made of certain things. You're constantly, whenever you find something alien, you're constantly trying to take it apart and figure out what is this thing. And if one of those things happens to be, their structures are better, we're going to start using that, then great. Great, go build a skyscraper that looks like an alien skyscraper because it's better designed for being a skyscraper. Okay. But again, it doesn't happen. There is no colonialism. It doesn't occur that way. There's no appropriation of culture that I can see, at least from a technological view.
Well, there's no overmasking of culture, because if you're on a planet which only has like these vaults, it's like, well, there's no culture there because there's no people there. It's no one's there. It's dead. It's
right.
Dead land.
Right, and you either have to explain the existence of objects by their aesthetic value, so like the architecture of design. Why was Venice shaped the way it was, and then there's no people there. Okay, well maybe they abandoned it and they didn't like the design anymore, or there was a functional reason why they built on slowly sinking ground, or why they built on mountains, or why they built here or there. So there has to be practical and aesthetic reasons for something's existence. And if you can't figure that out, then it's alien. You have no idea. Like, we have no idea why the alien vaults were designed the way they are, why the ridiculous air blast shot out from where the control panel was. That makes no sense. Like, can you imagine, like, sitting at your desk, okay, I'm going to increase the water solubility of our hydroponics bay, and it's going to splurt out of my keyboard and blast me through the wall. I'm like, no.
Yeah, it's like the big prank, isn't it? It's like you press the button and run away.
All the aliens are giant pranksters. So here, press this button, Jim. Like, no, you press it. Like, no, you press it. It's okay.
Yeah. Well, the remnant one that you met on the first planet, Habitat 7, was actually just a big giant whoopee cushion.
Pretty much.
It blows everyone out. Woo!
You're too stupid to use our tech. That's their safety device to determine. First, you have to have AI in your brain. Then you actually have to have a helmet that can withstand 200 pounds of force or whatever it is.
I can choose your own puzzle eventually. Like, you need to have these items before you can. If not, it's mission failed.
You're too dumb. Go back to the Milky Way.
Yeah.
We'll talk to your AI. He's smart. Okay.
And then, of course, we have the Angara, who are presented throughout the entire experience to be the natives of the Helios cluster, and much of their makeup deliberately calls to mind native archetypes we're all intimately familiar with. Except, things aren't quite that simple. The truth of what the initiative really is might be picked up on by fans of the original trilogy early on, but it doesn't come into full focus unless you follow a couple of relatively obscure side quest chains that I don't necessarily blame people for missing out on.
He just jumped from talking about the Angara to talking about the initiative backstory.
Yep.
It's very hard to follow.
Collecting Alec Ryder's memory triggers throughout the Helios cluster unlocks flashbacks that reveal a number of secrets about the initiative and Alec Ryder.
Alec's memory triggers. He hasn't been to these planets because he died on the first planet. What did he do? Did he go like Shepard and just explode into like quarks? And you have to hoover up these remaining quarks?
They magically disperse themselves throughout the frickin' galaxy.
You know what? If, let's say, he was interfacing with the Remnant tech, and then his mind got uploaded into the Remnant mind frame and then got scattered across all the Remnant technology, and then you're following these little imprints, that would have been some... I know I'm reaching over there. That's like the flimsiest branch I can go on, but at least it would have been something.
There's actually science fiction behind your reasoning. I still don't know how these blocks or whatever are unlocked on other planets. It doesn't make any sense. I don't know. And I don't care to because it sounds and looks stupid. So whoever wrote this is just like bizarre. It's just like, go to this random planet no one has been before and find a secret from your dad. It's like, what?
Role within it. You learn that while eccentric billionaire G.N. Garson was the public face of the initiative, the real power behind it was a mysterious benefactor. Woo! We never find out.
Ben.
You know what? I don't know if he's making fun of the story or he's just like having fun with the ideas. of the story.
I
Like
think he's having fun with the ideas.
yeah, because he obviously likes the story. So
No, if he likes the story for what it is, cool. Power to him, you know. Trying to make it as if like it's some kind of equal to like Mass Effect 1's a bit of a oh no.
but the thing is, if you're going to have a secret like this, the reveal has to have value, and all it's telling us is we don't know what's going on. There are alternate reasons for why we went to Andromeda, and they're unclear. That's all this is telling us, and how you get to those discoveries are stupid. So it's just a bad premise with bad execution, bad reveals, and just ultimately poor payoffs. It's just bad with bad with bad with bad. I don't know why he's talking about this, but he is, because colonialism is bad. Ugh.
Who this person actually was and never will, etc., etc. But we do know why they funded the initiative. The Reapers!
Fair enough.
Yep, it's every...
I wish the Reapers were here. My God, there'd be actually a threat to just wash away the aftertaste of Mass Effect 3. That would be like, oh, Reapers are Reapers again. Make Reapers great again. Go travel to an alternate galaxy to make them interesting. Yeah.
Everyone's favourite unknowable mechanical monstrosities. Those lovable rascals who made a habit of turning all intelligent life in the Milky Way into nutritious goop every 50 millennia that were actually created by giant squids and controlled by a really stupid AI, but let's just forget about that. The initiative's benefactor knew Shepard was right when he was banging on about those copper cuttlefish like a crazy person, and funded the initiative not as a colonial ship sent to control and secure a new living space for the Citadel species, but as a lifeboat sent into the unknown to ensure the survival of life in the Milky Way against an enemy the benefactor assuming to be unstoppable. The initiative aren't colonists. They never were colonists. They're refugees. Understanding this fundamentally changes the relationship dynamics between the initiative and every other species within the Helios cluster.
Okay, so he's admitting they're not colonists.
Yep.
Then why did he talk about colonization for like 8 minutes?
And it's just one of the things that if they really wanted to do this whole, I guess they were kind of caught between two different things. Like they wanted to do this exploration thing, like they want to run away from Mass Effect 3 as best they can, which I can completely understand. That thing's flipping Pripyat as far as I'm concerned. But at the same time, they still shackle themselves to it. It's like either remove yourself to it or resolve it. You can't. They still do this half-assed kind of, oh yeah, you remember that thing? It's you remember. It's like, no, please don't. Either cut it loose or resolve it, please. Don't shit me around.
Yeah, it was a pretty weak connection, and they never really went into detail. It was just sort of implied that this was the benefactor's reasoning for doing things.
Yeah.
And
if they were to do, oh sorry.
Yeah, and if you're gonna do it, just go with it. Go with the premise, make it clear, and say no. You're going there to ensure the survival of humanity. Period. We're just not going to reveal that to the public because we don't want people to freak out. We want people to join up. And if we did it that way, this project wouldn't work. Like, be very clear why this is happening. Do not give us god-awful reveals. You need reveals that are true. When you discover who the murderer is in a story, it's like definitive evidence, answers. You need to know. Poirot doesn't go, you know what? It could have been 5 people, but I can't figure that out. It's like, wait. So,
you know what the best intro for Mass Effect Andromeda could have been? Was the opening scene from Mass Effect 3 where all the Reapers are basically like destroying, and then you just hear like this communication thing that just goes, winter contingency is in effect, the Andromeda project is a go, and then you see the ship light up and then it starts heading out. You know, it's just like, boom, you've got it. You are the last. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, there you are. You've got your mission. Everybody's safe and stowed away.
That would have taken 10 seconds. Everyone would have went, oh, really? Awesome.
Yeah.
Perfect. We get it. Everyone on board is like, yep. We weren't expecting it, but we planned for it. Boom. Here we go.
Yeah. That took me like, what, 12 seconds of thinking? You know?
Put in another, like a series of sexy Edie's on board, and she's like, going to be looking after you for 600 years while you sleep.
That should have been one of the more interesting facts of like they should have had robots that all
Right.
connect to you, but they're all speaking to you like from the same voice, from the same persona of Sam. And it just
Yeah.
feel like this really kind of freaky, like, oh, hi Sam, and you're walking in, it's like, bye Sam, hi Sam, you know what I mean? Just like really like, what the fuck?
Yeah, and it's kind of like the Andromeda AI in Andromeda,
Yes,
that
I
TV
remember
show.
that.
Okay, where she has the body and she has the AI and they're separate and they're sort of talking to each other.
Yeah.
See, great simple
Yeah.
ideas that have been done before that you don't have to think too hard about.
All because we dared to watch science fiction.
And yeah, that's one of Gene Roddenberry's weakest shows, probably, in terms of
Yeah.
the Roddenberry mythos. So, Bioware just was not paying attention to not only popular culture, but not so popular science fiction. And that's like really bottom of the barrel science fiction. I wouldn't even call that science. That's like sci-fi stuff. So, alas.
The Angara are no longer naive natives welcoming their oppressors with open arms. They're accepting refugees in need. The Rokar, the anti-alien contingent of the Angara, are not resisting the cloying hand of colonialism, but are a racist, anti-immigrant faction, far more analogous to modern-day white supremacist organisations than any historical freedom fighter group. While the Angara are the closest thing the Helios cluster has to a native population, when it comes to the initiative, they are actually coded far closer to a traditional European power, reacting in multifaceted ways to a sudden influx of refugees. The unification of all three of these groups, the Angara, the Rokar, the Initiative, and their fight against the Kett, makes Andromeda not a story of white makes right colonial handwashing, but of multiple cultures learning to work and thrive together against an imperialistic enemy. Not bad for a game I thought would be an awkward exercise in colonial handwashing.
Well, that's all they could do because they wrote them to be just these genetic remnant of the remnants.
Yeah, they're like the worker force, aren't they? Or something like. Well, no one knows what they were for, but
Yeah.
they're just kind of like there.
Their culture just sort of happened, and we're like, "Where's your planet? Where's your giant space, politics or your space series of planets? Like, where is it?" It's like, nope, they have a little small place on a planet that's hidden. It's like, okay, where did you come from? How did you develop culture? How long is your history? Like, when did you get to the
Right.
stars?
This is also something, right? If the Angara are manufactured, why do they breed? Like, was that just a thing that evolved, or like, because if they're just manufactured, which they are, why would they ever need reproductive organs?
Well, the thing is, did they actually were they compatible? Because we're talking about clones of clones or whatever
Yeah.
came out of the machines that produce these things, and like did they come out with intelligence? Did they develop language? How did they hit the stars? How did they do that ramp up in technology? Like it's this giant gap between being born, not knowing where you came from, and then suddenly being a spacefaring race and fighting other spacefaring. It's like, whoa, where is this culture? Where is this history? Where is it? Where's your technology? Where's your medieval period? Where is your Iron Age? Like what happened? Like no,
It's like they could have like had a spaceship that crash landed, or like that's the colony ship that the manufacturing ship that they came, and it taught them everything that they know.
Yes.
It's like, yeah, this is mother, this is what it's called, this is what we worship. It kind of the technology evolved into kind of more religious symbolic thing.
And that would explain their culture. While they're very dependent, they have on a mother figure, or their mother figures are leaders.
Yeah,
And
they live in a matriarchal society.
Right.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
something, anything to figure, like to give us background on how the hell this alien society, because without them, there is no alien. There are no aliens. You go to a planet with plant life and levitating rocks and another opposing force or invading force. There are no aliens. That's it. How could you possibly write a story where you go to an entire other galaxy, a Mass Effect story at least, where there are no aliens? It's bizarre.
They've achieved the impossible.
Yeah, this is a secretly good story when you realize there's no aliens and it's still good. You're like, wait a second. You're talking to clones that just popped out of nowhere.
You could have, if they were going to, let's say, if going down the path of, let's say, aliens and whatnot, they could have just said, yeah, these are humans from different colonies that have been over the course of 4,000 years. They've just been separated because everyone's lost the FDL technology. And now, after 4,000 years, we've managed to that's basically the backstory of EVE Online. But at least it's kind of, why is there no aliens? Because in the sector, there are no aliens. It's just all humans. But everyone treats themselves as different alien species because you've got divergent paths. There you go.
Yeah. So just from this series of questions and solutions that we're coming up with, you can easily tell the narrative, the lore, the history, the culture of Mass Effect Andromeda is just lacking on so many levels. It's a very thin veneer of information about the world that we're given that does not explain anything of any value, of any substance, aside from there's some old aliens that we don't know that made some robots, and they left the robots that had vaults, and these vaults could control other vaults and control weather on planets, and they could make other aliens if you wanted. And there's an opposing force that wants that, and you have to stop them before they kill everyone. And they just happened to be some aliens that came from those machines, and we don't know why. That's the setup. There's no other substance there. There's no like what the Jahara, the Jardin, whatever they were called. There's no memory crystal. There's no ancient tablets. There's just stuff. They were gone. They left.
You would have thought that the Angara would actually be compatible with remnant technology if they were made from remnant technology. Like they would have some kind of interface that would kind of go, yeah, because you're the lower, let's say you're the Angara of the working class, then they'd have access to working class technology of the remnant.
They would have a natural disposition to building technology like that, or understanding technology like that. Like the Quarians have a natural inkling to all things tech, or AI tech, like stuff along those lines. Something about their character, about their nature, that represents why they are where they are, why they exist. There's nothing to that. There's nothing to that end. It's bizarre. Like they have all these opportunities to give the Angara a character, a unique trait, aside from personality, which is what you do anyway with all your characters. There's nothing there. It's substanceless. It's tasteless. It's ridiculous. I don't know how you could possibly enjoy reading or learning about the Angara, or reading and learning about any of these races in Andromeda. They're boring, they're flaccid, they're surface level. Compare that to all the species in the Milky Way galaxy. All kinds of reasoning why they exist, all kinds of conflict, all kinds of history. The wars, everything, you have a visual representation of why things exist. Why the Solarians are the way they are. Everything makes sense to it, not in a huge way, but in a simple. Oh, look, they're warlike. There we go. That's the Turians. They have all the ships. Oh, look at this other warlike species. Why are that way? Oh, well, you know what? Another species screwed them up. Why'd they screw them up? Because of another species that wanted to protect. Oh, really? And then there was another species that tried to kill everyone. Really? It's just this soap opera, which is what you realize is what is the melodramatic aspect found in the space opera genre. So we're no longer dealing with just science fiction. And when you start with science fiction, the best way to start is with hard science. And then you branch off into weaker aspects of the subgenres, which is a space opera, where you can go bombastic, you can get melodramatic, you can get those really, really big ideas. And you can only stretch them as far as how strong your hard science fiction is. So the concept of the Mass Effect was stretched as far as it could go, and it actually went a bit too far, honestly. It
went a bit noodling into.
Yeah, when they started getting into the mass relays and the Citadel and the Alpha Relay, it was like, okay, Now
Well,
you're
the Omega 4 relay basically breaks how the relays actually work because there's no other relay towards the collector base. It's like a relay needs two. And it's,
yes.
but yeah, there's no relay there. It's just like, well, why do you need a fucking Omega 4 relay then? If you just get there with FTL.
Yeah, and
You
they
get
had
the,
to like get into the details. Well, there's another mechanic that can cause it to be more accurate.
why is it oranges as well? It's like all relays are blue. You don't
Why?
have to
Yeah.
go orange.
What's with the color?
Yeah.
Why does it fry your ship when you light it? Like when you connect with it, there's no reason why an object should.
Yeah. Yeah, there's actually a bit where they talk about there's an overload in the FTL core. It's like mass relays don't use your FTL core, they use their own element zero core to propel. It's like, well, they don't propel you, but you traverse flight, but their element zero core is what makes you weightless or generates the massless corridor. There's no FTL used. Your
Right.
FTL is not used in it. It's ridiculous.
So to do that, like they could have done that properly in Mass Effect 2, but they didn't even think about the details because they weren't concerned with the science fiction elements in a storytelling manner. Because we're gonna make a sequel. We got money. We got bought out by was it EA at the time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, what they could have done is said that the relay that they found is more similar to the one that's like the Prothean one on I. And it's like, oh, then it kind of brings up the Prothean connection. You're like, oh, right. So this is like a Prothean relay, and that's why it only works in a limited fashion, rather than actually being an actual freaking relay that they manipulate.
Yeah, I know all these different flavors of relays. You're like, oh dear, come on. I mean, remember in Babylon 5 how many types of gateways they had?
Oh yeah, the jump gates and the hyperspeed, hyperspace.
They had all the jump gates, and then they had in the last few episodes they had the
quantum gate,
quantum gate or quantum space.
Yes.
Or quantum whatever it was, quantum hyperspace. That was it.
That was one of them.
Nothing complicated. There was certain pathways you couldn't take. The shadows can go in and out of hyperspace, and I think that was about it in terms of gateways. There's also the one made-for-TV movie where they tried to open a gateway. The Vorlons got ambitious and tried to open a gateway to.
Oh yeah, that was that movie one, wasn't it? Where you had the mind control aliens, wasn't it?
Right, the evil, domineering other universe aliens or whatever.
Yeah, they're actually the only alien species to actually have shield, which made them like not necessarily impervious, but like bloody hard to take down. It was like, well, these things actually take a lot of things to kill,
Yeah, and it was this big whole redemption story of the Vorlons who believed themselves to be gods, and they opened up this gateway, and like, oh my god, we got to close it, but we can't destroy it, or else they'll keep coming. And like, we got to just we have to hide it, and it just finds its way. It's like, oh dear. And there's this whole sleeping disorder thing of people not being able to see weird dreams, and that was for dramatic effect. But there was a background. There was story, lore associated with these physical existences, and it wasn't stretching the lore of hyperspace or gateways or anything like that. It was its own new tech that was under the umbrella of the Vorlons, and of course, whenever you have the progenitor species, they can do crazy crap. So you can get away with stuff like that. Mass Effect is one thing. Once you establish lore, you don't start subverting that and creating new lore. You don't just start playing around with, we got to go to this Dead Reaper. Where'd the Dead Reaper come from? Oh, we always had it. Oh.
We don't believe Reapers exist. Finds Dead Reaper, completely ignores it. Yeah, thanks, Shepard.
Yeah.
Dick.
Yeah, it's just you're doing stupid shit to cover your ass, which ends up making a bigger mess. The same with the Leviathans, the same with the Extended Cut, the same with all the things that BioWare has done post Mass Effect. They did not know how to paint themselves out of the corner they painted themselves in. They just couldn't do it. And they thought Andromeda would be the best bet, and it's just the worst. Not the worst thing they could have done. Obviously, there's much worse. It's just the way they handled it that hurt our brains. And this gentleman thinks it's great or secretly good, and we still have not found out why. So we're getting to the end of the video here, guys. So we'll just march on.
When Andromeda first came out to fairly tepid reviews and, let's call it, an unenthusiastic fan reaction, I was somewhat disappointed, but I did take it in stride to a certain extent. I'm kinda used to finding myself outside the internet's consensus for this kind of thing, and the only feelings I really held towards the discussion were, gosh, people are very upset about these animations, aren't they? Even after EA announced that they were putting the franchise...
To me, that sounds like he wasn't paying attention to the fans at all. He was just reading the major titles of blog posts from journalists saying, "Oh, people are arguing about these horrible animations." It's like, well, yeah, they were making memes about it, they were talking about it, they were showing cutscenes of all the tepid and silly plot lines of characters that don't go anywhere. We're showing, like, they showed off Liam's mission before the game was released. And it was like, oh, that looks like a lot of fun. It's all silly and comical. And we're like, oh, no, that's not a good sign. You don't want silly comical stuff in a space opera about trying to find a new civilization to found. This is not what you do. unless your story is so big and diverse that you can do crap like that. But there's no way you can argue that the story and lore of Andromeda is robust enough to constitute comedy and romance and entrepreneurship and pathfinding, whatever that is, and forming a colony and interspecies politics. And, like, it's just not there. It's surface level crap.
And ice, despite what seemed to everyone to be strong sales. I can't say I put too much thought into it once my first playthrough was finished.
Right. It did not have strong sales. It only sold 2.5 million in its first quarter. It only made $110 million in revenue, which then you put in the deductions, like it cost $100 million to make, which is included everything, that's his marketing, all that kind of such. So not strong sales, didn't make a lot of money. That's why it got shut down, because it made fucking all.
Yeah, no, there's not enough profit. Like, that's a smart move by EA to say, okay, how much profit did we make from this thing? Well, not enough to constitute even one DLC.
Yeah.
Which was planned. And it's like, oh. So EA sees a winning or a losing ticket and they go, nope, we're done.
Yeah, because they probably also went into the studio and went, right, where's your production pipeline? And all the computers are on fire, and they're just like, yeah, just shut this thing down. This is crap. Because even Mike Gamble said there wasn't a foundation for any additional content for Andromeda, which is basically, to me, they had no production pipeline, they had no system, or they would probably have to spend the next year and a half actually constructing that, because it was just such a mess. They'd have to be detangling everything just before they'd be starting from scratch, which EA was just like, I don't blame EA for that. That's just like, I'm going, yeah, sod these guys, they're useless.
No, yeah, a lot of people always give EA the dirty looks, but the past, what is it, since 2012, so 7-8 years with BioWare has been all on BioWare. You could argue the Frostbite engine has been its bane, but it doesn't take years and years and years to figure out how to use an engine. It takes a season. That's how I learned Unreal. You go to school, you spend months and months, you're learning an engine, and you know how to code. You know how to code the engine. You get updates, you get support, and now you can use the engine. Great. Make a gun, make a vehicle, make a running cycle, do level editing, do whatever. Like, yeah, that will take some time, but you learn. And when you make games, you're in it for passion. You're not in it for the money. You're not in it because you like the long hours. You're in it because you want to be there. So that tells me a lot of people do not want to be there. And when you see all these studios close and people getting fired and people leaving, Andromeda was one of those passion projects where it's like, oh, this is not going to turn out well. And that's what we found out. A lot of the mechanics did not work out. They had to hire people just to do the fun parts, which is the dune buggy stuff.
Yeah.
They had to hire a whole team from Need for Speed just to do that. Now, they obviously got some things right. And with, how many, 14, 15 releases of patches? I can't remember how many there were.
Oh, there was quite a fair few, wasn't there?
It was ridiculous, and that's just the gameplay. It's silly. So I guess the end result is a better game after all those patches and all the tweaks, but storytelling, no, they did not tweak the story one bit.
Yeah, well, there's not much once the thing's been wrote in. So that's why we play Mass Effect games. I mean, Bioware games have always been about, I hate to say this, but mediocre gameplay. They're never going to be better than current trends because the focus has to be on other things. That's cool. But the fact that every time they try to eke towards this, we want to be more like Gears of War or Halo or whatever, they've always lacked in something else. It's like they have to give something up. And it's really, really bad just to watch them just fall into the standard gaming tropes that we've kind of really didn't want Bioware to go down into, especially with just this. Like, this was actually their up until Anthem, obviously their largest project, with the amount of people working on it. They had like what, 250 people working on it?
Well, several studios, yeah.
Yeah. There was a lot of people at the Montreal studio because they had 50 from Edmonton, some from Austin, and then about 150 in Montreal, I think. So they had a lot of people working on this project. But to understand, it's like, oh yeah, the combat's great, but you're using the Frostbite engine. It's designed for shooters. So if you're saying that, yeah, the shooting's good, it's like, yeah, it's like saying this car works good because I based it on a car.
We took the template from a Honda. We made another Honda. Ooh.
Yeah, but this one's slightly bad. It doesn't have doors, an airbag, or a seat belt. So good luck. This is the BioWare car. But the other thing as well is just that in terms of game building, they should have really learned from Mass Effect 1, which when they bought Unreal 3 back in 2004, it couldn't do mathematics. It couldn't do anything because it was still off the shelf and they didn't get much support from Epic, who were still making Gears of War. So they should have learned, right, we've got this new engine, let's spend a year and a bit to just make ourselves understand this engine. But no, they're building the plane as it's trying to get it in flight. Like, no, you shouldn't be doing that. You get the basics down first before you start adding the additional components.
Yeah,
doesn't make sense.
And we're not even going to talk about procedural generation and how long that took before it was dropped. All the other silly things with face gen, all the things we're testing with the engine because they couldn't use the old face gen from Unreal. All this other crap for the pipeline they had to reinvent. So
yeah, they should have spent, and once again with Dragon Age Inquisition, it's like they should have learned from that. But it just shows you, obviously from Anthem, that BioWare refused to listen. The upper management is just like, no, you've got it done previous times, you can do it again. Deal with it, and they wonder why they're just it's just ridiculous. It's like, I guess it's one reason why BioWare didn't learn and why a lot of people are kind of going, yeah, Dragon Age 4 is not looking good at the moment.
Eventually, other games and other concerns came along, and any idle thoughts I had about Mass Effect Andromeda were lost. But then, one day, when I was idly browsing through this vile hellscape we call the internet, I saw an accusation levelled against the game whenever it seemed to come up, one that I found rather head-tilting. According to these commenters, Mass Effect Andromeda was bad sci-fi. The accusations...
That's... Yes.
Yes.
That's
yes,
true.
It is.
Mass Effect 2 was bad sci-fi. Mass Effect 3 was bad sci-fi.
Science fiction, you've got sci-fi. Sci-fi is basically the spreadable cheese, and this managed to make it, it's like the spray-on cheese.
Oh no, I'm being very accurate. I know what sci-fi is.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying it is bad sci-fi. It's not even in the realm of hard science fiction or science fiction in general. This is sci-fi, and it's bad sci-fi. Anyone can write well, not anyone, but most people who know Mass Effect, I say, hey, can you write a story about an exodus from the Milky Way galaxy to another galaxy? How would you write that? Give me 2 pages. What do you think? I can get a better story from the average person than I would from the story we got. Just on theories, just on ideas, just on premise. And it's not hard. I don't know what the hell these guys were doing for, was it 4 or 5 years?
I think it was 6 years altogether, because a lot of the stuff was, because you got the whiteboarding phase where Casey Hudson kind of puts these Mega Man brain down. So,
yeah. So then we're talking about the actual production phase, which was a year and a bit. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think it was officially put into pre-production in 2013, where like they started to kind of go, right, okay, let's see what we can do. All the bright ideas, and then 2014 was like, this is on fire, you know. And then like that's when they lost Gerard Lahoney, their original project manager, who gave the procedural generation idea, and then for some reason they just stuck with it because no one else was in charge, I guess. It was
Yeah, and
just,
that's when Walter stepped in.
yeah, he came in at was it? I think he was it 2016 when it was his first advertisement when he was on the E3 thing, and he was like, "Oh yeah, we're just working on the polishing phase,
Yeah.
polish." And then they did the Twitch streams, and they were like, "Yeah, those animations, they're a bug, right?" And like, "Oh yeah, it's totally a bug. It's not a bug. It's just the game. It's shit. They fucked it up." But again, to be fair, the facial animations in Inquisition are pretty shit in comparison to Mass Effect 3. Yeah, I will be honest there.
They look amazing compared to Andromeda, though.
Oh yeah,
At least they look attractive. I mean, you could look at a model and say, "Hey, that's a female. Wow, it looks feminine."
it's like he's going to be a trap card or something.
Yeah, whoa.
Oh, you know, it's the 21st century.
But here, let's see what he has to say about sci-fi. See why it's good.
Sorry,
Struck a chord with me. I immediately disagreed with it, but then I had to ask a number of questions that led me down a path towards this very video. If Andromeda was bad sci-fi, then what was good sci-fi? What were the criteria of sci-fi that Andromeda failed to reach? Now, we're all going to have different stipulations and rules as to what constitutes a genre and what doesn't, but we're going to have to make a foundation if we're going to get anywhere. So, sci-fi. To me, science fiction is simply the other side of the coin to fantasy. Both genres are about the concerns, ideas, and themes of the time, place, and mind in which they are created, and
No, they're not about the time, place, and mind when they are created. They're in the future. They are for something that does not exist. Yeah, the plots are the same, but that's what you do. You take an existing plot, you throw it into the future, and you say, okay, I'm going to give this plot a new spin. You're going to read a story about murder that you've never heard of before because I'm going to invent a gun that can go through walls. And I'm going to have this whole story about this mysterious assassin that no one can catch because they don't know where these bullets are coming from. And that was actually
episode.
DS9 episode, that's right. So it's taking a concept that we know, putting it into the future, adding some science, either science itself or technology, and looking at that technology, how it explains or identifies with a character or an element that we can relate to. So a culture based off teleportation of bullets or whatever, a future lifestyle of tech, the possibility of something. So you have partly true stuff like, okay, we can't go faster than light, but we find some fictitious element and now we can. That's not present in, I'm trying to think of like an old science fiction story like Frankenstein. Frankenstein was like 1818 Mary Shelley, right? I wouldn't even call that science fiction, but it had science fiction elements. You know, there was no like, gee, I wish I could bring something back to life. It's like, it's not really a sign of the times. It's like, what if?
It's like a lot of the science fiction authors back in like the 19th and early 20th century were like, in the future, there's going to be like lots of balloons and things like that. You know, balloons. Zeppelins, sorry, balloons. It's like just some McDonald's helium-filled balloon. But anyway, but you know, it's like they had an idealized version of the future, and yeah, it was based upon the ideas that they had, but it was a more futuristic version because we have spaceships where we have shuttlecraft and whatnot. We can imagine far greater. We can go beyond the solar system. You know, yeah, it's
yeah, like look at Jules Verne. Like he was doing stuff that wasn't a sign of the times. He was thinking of like tubes that you could send food down from far distances, and you could order it, and they would come out of these, you know, these giant air pressured tubes. It was like all kinds of crazy ideas he was coming up with. Yeah. But that wasn't. They didn't have like, you know, cafeteria food being sent to you instantly through air pressurized tubes. Like this is a very strange definition of science fiction I've never heard of before. So.
Maybe that's what the Remnant thing was trying to do. It was an air pressure thing for food, but there was no food in it. So he just blasted everyone. Yeah.
I order some oxygen on this planet. Boom! Big Macs for everyone. We'll supersize that. How big? As big as it gets.
Yeah, it's like you just want some like raptors also going like some polystyrene.
Would you like some tornadoes with that? Boom. Okay, let's go.
Presented with a fresh perspective in a fantastical setting. Star Trek may have been set in the 23rd century, but its vision of a utopian future, a united humanity free of conflict, venturing eternally into an infinite horizon, all races, genders, creeds, hand in hand, was undoubtedly shaped by the times in which it was born, in the heat of the Cold War, before even the Civil Rights Act. Even Star Wars...
No.
He's trying to explain Gene Roddenberry's vision based off the times that Gene Roddenberry lived in.
I mean, you could even go like further back than that. It's like, well, Starship Troopers has an idealized version of like where you have the is it the Republic? And they have like a very, very small government with a volunteer army and things like that. It's like the government is incredibly limited. It's like a libertarian's wet dream, pretty much. It's great. You know?
I mean, we can go crazy with examples, but this is really strange. I mean, the sign of the times, like, does that mean if the gentleman the brothers who wrote Roadside Picnic, because they were in Soviet Russia, they thought of garbage as treasure, and therefore aliens that drop their garbage off, like, and mutations, and no, I don't think they went that far. I think their imaginations were just did whatever they wanted to think about, and their problem was they couldn't get published because they had the ban on book publishing, and they had to go through several countries to do that, and finally it came about. So it's like, I'm not saying he's wrong. Some people are influenced by the times, of course, but that's not the foundation of science fiction.
It's a what if, isn't it?
It's like what would happen in the future? What if we could time travel? What does it mean to understand your own strength, and where does that come from? How do I find that out? And maybe I can figure that out by looking at an android or a replicant, and they tell me and they show me that they've experienced life far beyond the human limitations, and they're telling me what life means. What does it mean to be alive? Like, that's
the possibilities of sentience in organisms and things like that. There's many ways of living.
Yeah, the elements are the same, but it's not based off of the times. It's based off a future possible world that you're envisioning as an idealized reality or an unidealized reality. A horrible, like 1984 has all sorts of messages in it that have science fiction elements. It's more of a political piece, but it's what if this were to happen, and the government controls everything, the way you think, the way you read and write, everything. How would that look, and why? How would that constitute itself? What does it mean to live in such a world? Like that's what you're asking. You're trying to push the boundary. You're certainly not going, oh, this mundane existence, let's write about it. It's like, no.
I mean, you say that stories could be influenced by the time. Like, you look at Kirk's attitude towards his ship, it was a very how the US Navy would handle as things like he would never give up his ship, whereas like Next Generation was more of a peaceful exposure, obviously coming out of the Cold War and things like that, so things are looking towards. And then obviously with DS9, it's all about enforcing the peace, which is when we saw a lot more UN operations of where we were going around and trying to enforce peace. Those are the only things that you can really take from it, personally.
Yeah, there are political themes and other themes in those stories that are...
Themes. The themes are important.
Well, they are present, so whether we like them or not is immaterial, but they are there. So DS9 took about a year or two to get its bearings, and then it took off with political and religious symbolism and all sorts of other wonderful plot lines. War was a big aspect, especially with O'Brien. He just can't stop killing Cardassians and all the wonderful strife. Like, that was a beautiful series of stories with all kinds of elements that I would respectfully call a good space opera, just because it has such a series of ideas and themes and symbols. You don't get any of that in Andromeda. You get you get a veneer. You get the concept the surface. But his definition of the genre, or even if he's calling it sci-fi as a subgenre, is a little off.
Buffy's science fantasy setting was born out of war and adventure serials that its creators grew up watching. Sci-fi is never born in a vacuum. There's something of every artist in their work, and there's always something of the world in which they live in every artist. Therefore, every sci-fi world is always a reflection of our world.
Yeah, but so is every story. Every person who writes something doesn't just invent stuff out of the top of his head. He can't do that. Like the Golden Mountain has to come from golden mountains before you amalgamate these ideas. He's not really giving me any insight into what science fiction is.
Some way, shape, or form, and that essential feature is what defines the genre for me. Mass Effect has always shared DNA with Star Trek, being as it is a future.
And Babylon 5 and Star Wars and that's
Alien. Yeah.
Alien. Like, yeah, it's a space opera. Space operas just take everything into them. They try to have as many themes and as many genres as possible. It's melodramatic, it's over the top. In the first Mass Effect's case, because it was the first one and they were coming from a KOTOR background and they wanted to do their own IP, they took those concepts and they made a solid foundation with so much lore that whenever you wanted to know how the hell a Mass Effect gun worked or what the hell was a kinetic barrier, you can go to the codex and it would tell you. And you don't find that too often. You find that in Greg Egan books, the Diaspora series, or it's a 7-part series, that was the last book, because he writes such complicated stories, you need to have a glossary or an appendix to define all these words because they're so, like string, he uses string theory and he talks about a whole race of androids and all sorts of crazy things. So you need to have that level of understanding the vocabulary before you can even read the damn thing. And I have problems reading it too. So that's what at least the pedigree that Mass Effect was trying to hit. He was trying to hit the classic Asimov style stories with a big galaxy encompassing scope. And it just happened to be about AI machines coming and eat you all every cycle.
Wherein various species and perspectives must work together to solve impossible problems. But Andromeda is closer to this ideological core than the original trilogy ever managed. As it went on, the Mass Effect trilogy invited more and more sharp cynicism into its fundamentally optimistic premise, culminating in an...
It wasn't an optimistic premise. Mass Effect was not optimistic. It was like, hey, look, we're all going to die. Hey, look, we're all going to die again. There's so many times where it's like the Collectors are going to kill us all, the Reapers are going to kill us all, Leviathans are going to kill it. Where's
it's very optimistic? It's very optimistic. Hey, humans, fuck off. It's like, oh, right, that's thank you for that there, Tim. Yeah, that's great.
The Geth are going to kill us all. Tim is going to kill us all. It's like, what the hell? It's not optimistic.
Yeah, it's like everyone's established. Like you've still got tension. You've got like massive, almost open war between the humans and the Batarians. The Turians and the humans are still quite rich. You've got the Krogan lingering aftermath.
Yep.
Like they've got their hatred.
The Rachni.
Yeah.
There's about a dozen threats in the story.
Then you got the unknown threats as well. Like there's other species in the Terminus systems that we don't know, that we never get introduced to.
Yeah, I'm really like, what is this guy on about? This is not more. It's not optimistic. I'm sorry. There's maybe the Asari that appear optimistic. They're very positive people. Quarians aren't optimistic. They're very protective and scared. I'm trying to think of an optimistic. I guess the humans. They seem kind of neutral. It's kind of aggressive, actually.
They're actually what Laura says that they get the rest of the galaxy's humanity as a bully. Yeah. Like we just barge our way through in. It's like, so the opinions of humans is actually quite low because people kind of go like, yeah, you just basically bully your way through. If you don't have if you can't negotiate it, you'll probably just take it by force. So a lot of people don't actually respect humans for that.
Yeah, so maybe he's talking about the first game in the context of before the veil is pulled away from our faces, that we don't know about the mystery of the galaxy, and everyone's in peace on the Citadel. That's the optimistic feeling. But that goes away rather quick when you learn of the Geth, who just want to kill you all. And then the Rachni, who did almost kill everyone before. Everyone's like, kill them. They're bad. Don't let them go. Kill them. I was like, oh, okay. Then we learn the Reapers, and it's like, oh, Jesus. Every AI you encounter blows up. There's too many times where the galaxy wants to eat you. So, don't know.
An ending that essentially claimed that people with differences cannot possibly live together in harmony. Andromeda reverses this trend, and like so many other aspects
Okay, so you took a dig at the ending of Mass Effect 3. Thank you. That's good.
of its story and design, returns to its roots of Mass Effect 1, telling a story that is, at its core, about how in an increasingly diverse, pluralistic and borderless world, we need to learn to work together in order to fulfill our full potential. And it does it through the lens of a space millennial running over space.
Isn't that the synthesis ending? We need to work together by becoming one hive mind.
You're essentially the villain of every fantasy story out there. We need one kingdom, one rule, no more war. It's like, okay, here we go.
Even actually the destroy endings, like, we succeeded through our different because we were different. It's like, isn't that one of the things that Javik says about defeating the Reapers? It's like the reason why the Protheans lost is because they were just a monoculture, and because we're coming at us from different angles, the Reapers can't counteract us.
That was a theory I think he had, and it's
yeah. But we couldn't win conventionally, though, could we?
No, we couldn't. You can't win. Just the guns we designed to actually penetrate Reaper shields just don't work.
Yeah.
We just designed them to do it that, but they don't work.
Yeah, they don't work.
The fleets, they don't do anything. The Canes, they you might miss. You can miss.
Yeah. Just imagine them going, you did equip the Phoenix cannons on, right? Right?
I thought these.
You did equip the Phoenix cannons.
I thought they were missiles, sir. You ordered the missiles. We were 400 missiles. We don't have a launch bay for missiles. But wait, what?
Yeah. Just stick them on the Makos.
Eject the Makos into space and guide them with the missiles. The thing never blows up; it just stays there.
The Mako's got thrusters. It's practically a fighter craft. I guess.
It's indestructible. It's like, just launch these things.
A six-wheeler. I mean, if that isn't art, I don't know what is.
The six-wheeler is art. He loves 6 wheels on a car. I don't know.
By now, you've probably worked out that I have a real fondness for this game. I think it succeeds enormously in both its gameplay and its story. It's a real shame.
Okay, again, we skipped the first 12 minutes where he talks about gameplay, so I'll give him that. But he hasn't given me one good reason why this story works or is even successful or successful amazingly. Not one.
Then that Mass Effect Andromeda's many strengths have been overshadowed so thoroughly by its very real and obvious technical shortcomings. And yeah, those are a bummer. But when I think back to my time playing Mass Effect Andromeda, Calo melting into his seat aboard the Tempest Bridge isn't really what comes to mind.
Calo melting to his seat? Is that a glitch? Okay.
Yeah, that's a bug, yeah.
I thought his head disappeared or something like that.
You actually see just his head peeking out the top side. It's like, I am one with the seat.
Oh, right. I remember that glitch. Okay, no, okay.
I remember characters that I genuinely love, electrifying gameplay, and an engaging, progressive story that's gone underappreciated for far too long. It's a shame.
Far too long. Dude, do a plot analysis of Andromeda. Show me the good sides of Andromeda's story, because all I saw was bland, boring, melodramatic tropes and not much else. There really wasn't that much substance.
Then, that EA's lack of faith in the series rendered Andromeda a graveyard of unresolved plot lines and character arcs that were just getting started. As much as I do like all...
Okay, character arcs that are just getting started is not a sign of a good story. You want a character arc to be completed in a story. You don't need a second story to continue an arc. You have a second story to continue the story of a character that opens up a new arc. You don't have like 2 arcs going, and you have 3 arcs going, you're not finishing any of them. That's not...
No, we need 4 arcs. Sorry. Technically 5.
Yeah. Which we'll never
That's a
get.
book.
We'll never get the DLC writer arc, the character writer arc. So it's like, oh, he has a personality now. He's not just a schmuck who has an AI in his head.
Mass Effect Andromeda character sold separately.
I would like to see the Shepherd arc. That would be a good. I think that would sell. The Shepherd, you download it into your SAM, and now you have the AI, the Shepherd AI or the Shepherd VI program as Sam, and he's like, "Well, it's time to propagate a new species." I was like, "Wait, whoa, what are you doing?" But I'm just a machine. You can do it for me, Ryder. I'll show you how. I was like, whoa, slow down there.
Of Andromeda's crew, it's clear that their journey was only just beginning. The lack of continuation gave me a very hollow feeling when it was all said and done. It's yet another thing about...
No. You got a hollow feeling because it was a hollow story. It wasn't because you were expecting more. It's like you felt hollow because that's the pointlessness of the story. That's what you feel when you read a bad story, when you watch a bad movie. It feels hollow because there's nothing there. It's substanceless. It's empty.
It's a funeral.
It is a funeral. It is a casket with nothing in it. You're just like, what am I crying over? There's nothing to cry over. I'm just like, oh. You have this sad, melancholic feeling of what was the first game. And this is a poor attempt at trying to establish what made the first game great, and not understanding those elements and trying to do something. They did try to do something new. I'll give them that, and they failed at it. They failed hard. They failed technically. They failed dramatically. You can even say comically, because of the comedy in the story, which does not hit any of the highs it should have been, unless you think the glitches were, a meta form of comedy. Just it's so bad it's funny. I'll give it that. Oh yeah, that made me laugh. There were so many that the game became a joke. Kind of like The Room is funny because it's sort of poorly put together. We could always go back to those videos and those GIFs of Ryder falling through so many aspects of the level. So many glitches with the face, the weird combat, the T-poses. There's all kinds of great comedy to have from Andromeda, but not because it was intended. It's because it was so poorly built.
The game that links it to Mass Effect 1. That game, while great, is weighed down by an overly expository script and characters that hadn't really become the iconic companions we eventually came to accept them as.
Excuse me, Garrus is not the iconic companion, or is he talking about Andromeda?
Rex isn't iconic. Like, wasn't he voted one of the top companions because it was a Microsoft exclusive back then, but he was actually voted the top companion out of Microsoft games for that year.
But the next year it had to have been Garrus. Garrus is always number one.
Oh, yeah.
On every poll I see, it's always Garrus, then Tali, then Rex. Always. Then there's Liara, and then there's Ashley. It's always the first Mass Effect 1 characters. Always.
Yeah, Tali's the one that you keep on the side and you visit on weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're going out every other day with Garrus.
Yeah.
It has issues that are a byproduct of it being a part.
Sorry, it just made me think. It's like I'd go with Tali, but I'd be thinking of Garrus.
What would Garrus do right about now? I wonder what...
Yeah. That's what you can just talk about. Is just Garrus when you're on dates with Tali.
Isn't Garrus cool? Would you like him?
Foundation stone for an entire franchise. And if EA had, say, pulled the plug on a well-selling game because they wanted to chase money-making trends instead of making games that actually mattered, those flaws would stand out all the more. For example, Andromeda's cast doesn't really reach the same heights as the crew of the Normandy, but those guys had 3 games to flesh out their personalities.
No.
They had one game that was so good that EA bought them out and said, make more of that. And they did. They wouldn't have done that if the game was a flop or wasn't done well. If the story was not there, they wouldn't have continued it. With Andromeda, the story is not there. I cannot see a sequel to Andromeda that makes any sense or is worthwhile because no one cares.
he obviously isn't looking at the financial. Like I mentioned this before, it did not sell well. It was on sale a week after launch. That's not a good sign. So you can't sort of say it sold millions of units. It's like, yes, but if those units were sold at the vast majority at 50% off, then each unit is basically, you have to be buying like 2 or 3 units to equate a $60 price tag. It's daft. It's just really that, and they aren't getting recurring revenue from the multiplayer either. Which actually, that's the thing about Anthem. Yeah, they may have made $100 million from digital revenue alone, but then when obviously you talk about the cost of expenditures of the actual making of the game itself, that's probably going to be a massive chunk. But only 3.5 million of that was actually in the microtransactions, so they've got no recurring revenue. So BioWare, they can break even. They can go past breaking even in order to keep themselves alive, but they don't have that big boom that they had with like Mass Effect 2, where they sold 7 million units in the first quarter or whatever it was. It was a ridiculous number, but they're never going to reach that ever again. Sorry, but they've had it, and
Yeah,
they're still trying to chase that dragon.
and it's going to be years before we even see an inkling of Dragon Age whatever. And God knows how that's going to turn out. From what we've heard so far, they have rebooted that thing so many times, and it's just like, what? How many times do you restart a project where you think, you know what, this is not going to work? I've never seen a game be rebooted within that short a period and still be worked on.
It's a game that rebooted and managed to piss off most of the original crew for the Dragon Age team. That everyone's like, no, what, fuck this, we're leaving. You know,
Yeah.
you're doing something wrong there, BioWare.
So there's really no hope for an Andromeda sequel that I can even foresee in the next 8 years. It's just not going to happen.
Andromeda should have been the base plate that should have been the foundation setting, and instead it was just a tactical nuclear strike. Whatever hopes we had of, like, the Chernobyl that was Mass Effect 3, then suddenly Andromeda comes along and just hits it with another nuke. Here you go, guys.
Yeah.
But I'd say the Andromeda cast is more interesting than just the Mass Effect 1 characters in that game.
Okay, so he's saying this team, Liam and this alien guy, female Garrus, not Rex, lesbian chick, weird Asari chick, female human, are more interesting than the cast of Mass Effect 1. Them's fighting words, but I don't really care because I don't know what he's talking about.
Whether we're watching the movie, but yet like two of them have to stand, like, oh, that's painful. And this is actually just another kind of flashback attempt in terms of, hey, you remember the Citadel when everyone sat around in the room and they sat on a couch? It's like, yeah, that was shit. Thanks, BioWare, for remembering shit. Why does like the Asari look like she's just being potato mashed on top of it? She's got no neck.
I love how all the Asari have the same nose.
Yeah,
The entire cast of Asaris, every Asari has the same nose, the same face. Everything's the same. They couldn't make a second or third nose. No, it's bizarre. But apparently this cast is better than the first game. Okay. Except for Rex. Because Rex is like a god or I don't know.
I think the things Andromeda gets right are put into much sharper focus. And it does get an awful lot right. Its characters, themes, and gameplay help rank it alongside the rest of the games in the original trilogy. And even now, with the series on the rocks and EA looking to make BioWare the next notch in its kill streak, I still hold out hope that one day we'll see those crazy kids of the Tempest again.
I certainly hope not, because can you imagine rebooting Andromeda to make it work? I mean, Andromeda did not work as a story. I think, as much as this guy likes it, he knows it has failings. In order to do that, you would have to revamp every single character. None of them worked dramatically. None of them worked comically. There were some simple moments with, I think, Vetra. Like, her character was clear, but it never really it was never associated with the plot. It didn't have anything to do with it. Compare that to Miranda in Mass Effect 3. She was at a certain plot point. Her entire arc was right there, and you got to choose over the course of the story whether she lived or died, whether her sister lived or died. That is what you want to see. You want to see your player involvement in an RPG matter with your choices. That is not present in Andromeda. There's no choices that you make that affect the plot.
There's no consequences yet.
No, there's nothing. There's no stakes. There's no value. There's no depth.
What was that one that the one where you talk to not Javit, sorry. I've forgotten the Angara's name now.
No, I don't know either. Yeah.
I've completely forgotten. I do apologize. But when you go to that planet and you talk to the Moshai, and it's like, "Oh, we need to destroy this." Like, no, we can get us back. It's like, yeah, we can. We have spaceships, but if we only had guns on the spaceship, we could have like nuked it from orbit. But you know what I mean? It's like there's no consequence, or even Drax with his scouts. Like, there's no kind of like, you killed the scouts off. It's like Drax doesn't say anything to you about that. He just has a cold shoulder for like a couple of moments, then he just carries on. It's like, come on.
It's a contrived series of events. Your ship doesn't have guns. Your car doesn't have guns. You don't end up solving problems on the wannabe Citadel for whatever reason. Like, you don't just start unlocking people. It's like, hey, we can use people. We have planets. We've established bases. Come on, take them out. It's like you have to unlock them in orders with credits or whatever the hell they called it. It's a contrived series of events to make all of this work. That's not good storytelling. That's not good game design. So the premise was flawed, as I mentioned, even before the game came out years ago from the promotional material we saw. And they had to walk a very, very thin line. And they had to use the elements of science fiction to do so, to keep them balanced. So all of this makes sense. And it did not work. It did not make sense. These characters do not work. The characters could have worked, as we've seen with Mass Effect 2, even though they were independent of the plot. But they could have been attractive, they could have been fun, they could have been dramatic, whatever their arc required. And that didn't work. And that's sad, because that's what we know BioWare can do well, or has done well. And there's really no hope for Andromeda. There is hope for the next Dragon Age, but that's slim. Andromeda, there's none.
The Dragon Age 4 is going to be a massive Hail Mary, but I reckon they're going to be overly ambitious.
Yeah,
collapse.
There's hope. If they were rebooting a project that many times in 1 year, it's like, whoa, holy crap, what the hell are they doing? So they're very, very serious about getting that right, which is good. They should always be serious about getting it right, but getting it right should have occurred years ago. And what they want to do is produce the best version of what they have already done. And they can't do that because they don't have a pipeline. And if we're told that they're using the code base from Anthem for the next Dragon Age, you're like, okay, that's not a bad thing, because the code base is obviously functional, or else they wouldn't use it. There's functions in there, there's tools they've built that are there to make their job easier, so they don't have to go back to reinventing the wheel. But we're still talking about Anthem. We're still talking about a game that abandoned lots of mechanics, or is designed for a totally different game. And you're going to make a medieval fantasy dark story in an engine that you barely got working the first time you tried it with Inquisition. So I don't know. I really don't think I've been sold. I mean, we have another 2 minutes or minute and a half of this guy talking about Andromeda is secretly good, and I did not get anything from what he was saying, aside from he liked it. There's no objective values he mentioned. Aside from the first 12 minutes we skipped, which was all gameplay. So I'll give him that. But storytelling, I do not care at all about the plight of Ryder and his crew and his weaponless ship and his weaponless car and what the hell the Angara are doing. Nothing matters. I don't care.
On the star.
That's
Thank you very
great.
much.
That's it.
Rather humbling. This video was pretty rough because I'm just sort of getting the hang of.
Yeah, well, he's not a completely biased, which I liked about this guy. What was his name again? I'm sorry, let me just go back. His name is Woodaba, Woodaba. I actually enjoyed the video more than I thought because he does crack jokes about Andromeda, and he's not completely blind to what made Andromeda good and bad. So I like that honesty, but at the same time, he's very biased toward liking it and not explaining why. And that's the problem we have with most of these videos. The creators are just one-sided, or their bias gets in the way of knowledge or their understanding of information. So trying to, like, his explanation of science fiction is a joke. I don't know. I've never heard that interpretation before. The comparison to fantasy is accurate, meaning that you do things in fantasy and call it magic, whereas you do things in science fiction and call it technology. It's the same idea. It just lends itself to a lot more avenues in science fiction for man versus machine, man versus man, man versus nature, than with fantasy, because with fantasy you have to then create and go into more detail with magic. Like, how does this energy source work? Is it connected to nature? Is it connected to some ancient thing? And it ends up becoming either half technology anyway, or fantasy tech, or whatever you call that amalgamation. And once you get into science fiction, I've noticed with most people who get into science fiction, it's like not a drug, but it's like a favorite dish you order whenever you go to a restaurant or go out to eat. It's like, I want something like that. Like, I love salt, or I love savory. I want that again. And that's the same feeling you get when you get a good science fiction, when you get a good Star Trek episode, when you get a good Star Wars novel, comic book, show on TV. Like The Expanse, I think is the big one on TV for me, on Netflix now. Oh, sorry, not Netflix, on Amazon. And you just want more. You want to see more. You want to read more. And that's what we have to do. I don't think Andromeda will ever be taken seriously as a genre, or an example of a genre that you want to go through again. Maybe to play. Maybe if they take or appropriate the gameplay of Andromeda when they make another reboot of Mass Effect, if they ever get that far. I might be interested in seeing that, but by that time they'll be like 7-8 years from now.
Yeah, that's very dependent on Dragon Age 4, isn't it? Really, Spyware have only become a one gaming company. They've lost the ability to manufacture multiple games and maintain them. So, yeah, they've dug themselves into a right little rut. Because when you think back at even 2012, 2011, you had Mass Effect 3, Star Wars: The Old Republic, and Dragon Age 2. You're like, that's 3 games that they were working on. Well, with DLC and things like that, I mean. But.
Yeah, and obviously they ramped up for Mass Effect 3, and then they ramped down for whatever else they were doing. But, oof, yeah, I don't know what's going to happen, but Mass Effect is not in my immediate radar, and not for a long time. I'll be looking at TV and movies and other science fiction avenues, but there's nothing, not even Star Citizen. I'm always curious about Star Citizen, but yeah, there's nothing really I'm looking at.
On that. So
I think I got a super chat. Anyone who wants to ask me questions, just at me in the chat. The only one I got was from Dr. Martin Luther Pepe. Sorry, my face is tired. Genius rating right there. I can't remember what we were talking about at that point in time.
that was Director Tan, I think it was.
Oh dear. Okay.
Was it Tan? I've forgotten the name now, but yeah, it was basically my face is tired lady. It's just genius level right in there,
Yeah, so I'm just going through my ats. So if you want to ask me a question, do so now. From Berkman Gaming, 9 patches. 9 patches, okay. Stopped after that. Patch 5, they removed De Nouveau. Oh, right, that's right. They took out De Nouveau. Huh. It's still broken,
Yes.
though?
Well, they actually made it. If you want Origin Premium Access, the Andromeda was actually for free. So if you were paying $5.99 a month or whatever it was, you got Andromeda for free.
Right.
So they probably used that to boost up their number of sales figures. Like, we've just given it away.
You know, Smudboy, you need a second movie to explain the origins of the main ray, or a third movie. Well, whatever's going to happen in the next Star Wars movie this year is up in the air. J.J. Abrams is just going to pull something out of his ass and hope it works. So,
Rise of the Retcon.
yeah, it's essentially going to be a retcon. But you know what? Ryan Johnson's okay with that, so everything's fine. It'll be
You know
great.
the worst thing about that is that J.J. Abrams is actually the producer on The Last Jedi, but since Ryan was so far up Kathleen Kennedy's, he just had to literally watch and just see everything that he was planning to do be destroyed. I'm not saying it was going to be great, but just watch this buffoon just completely like obliterate whatever plans he had. It was soul crushing. It's like, you have to sit there and you have to watch this happen.
Oh dear. Oh. We'll all see the movie eventually, I'm sure, but you know, I'm not looking forward to it. Smud Boy, have any of you gentlemen have seen the 1979 film Stalker, directed by Andrei Tarkovsky? Well, I was about to, and when I did the book review with Jordan on our book talk series for Roadside Picnic, he actually watched it, and apparently it's very loosely related to the book, and ultimately it should be forgotten or just skipped. It's not really that important. It's not a bad story. It's just very different. It's all about the one of the doctors, I think, looking for a nuclear bomb in a suitcase or something, and it's hidden in one of the fields. I can't remember the name of the field because my memory is not good of what the expanses were of all that crazy physics. So it's a lot different. It's a lot under budget, but it is a classic. It's a cult classic. So if you even have an inkling of fascination with Roadside Picnic, I would say check it out. But it's not what you expect. It's not easy to watch, and it's pretty amateurish. Don't the Angara have like a tower hermit village in the jungle ruined planet where the Angara can learn how to use the REM tech but not understand it? I think you missed that in your gameplay. Yeah, I probably did.
Yeah.
I don't recall.
If that's a side option thing, that should have been crucial to the Angara. But if it's just like a kind of, oh yeah, those dudes over there are doing it, it's like, it's a bit insulting. It's a bit annoying, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of like made for video game or made for TV alien culture. It's like, boom, we need one, and they just have stuff, and then they know stuff, and it's like, oh, really? Okay. No history, no explanation where they came from, no great telling of culture or past leaders of the past 1,000 years or 2,000. No, just they can fly. They have technology. They have shuttles. In episode 9 trailer, it said that the saga is ending, thank goodness, on the fundamental points of plot, character motivations, and story arcs. What is it ending exactly? I hope it ends something to do with Kylo Ren, because that's the only substance I can see out of those characters that have any meaning. And he is just a conflicted guy who's running around trying to be something he's not. And he's being told to do all these bad things, and now he's finally able to choose for himself. And hopefully he will either learn what that means, so he will grow into a different person, or he will revert and just go pure dark side and just get pure kill. I'm in control, I have power. So that's how it's going to go. It's Mr. Emo Boy Ren is going to choose full dark or be a little more mature about the whole thing and learn his lesson. Whatever that lesson is, I have no idea, because that's dependent on the theme of whatever episode 9 is all about. So, and no one has any idea what the Skywalker means, whether that's a new name for Jedi or a new order of Jedi, or if Kylo's going to call him that, or who the hell knows what JJ's going to do. I can't predict the mind of J.J. Abrams, thankfully.
He's got his mystery box, hasn't he? He's too
Is
busy.
that is that his thing? Is that all he does? Is that what he's known for?
Yeah, that's all what he does. That's what he did with, I think it was Lost, where I kind of gave up on that. I think it was the third. So it was just like, you guys are just making shit up as you go along here. You have no idea.
I was told to watch Lost. It never appealed to me. Even when it came out, I was like, I think that was the '90s. I was busy
No,
doing.
it was 2000s because
Really?
I was 18 at the time. Yes, that would have been 2004.
Yeah. Okay. The '90s, I was
2004,
watching X
2007.
Files and Millennium. So after Millennium,
Oh, I
everything.
remember that with Lance Hendrickson. Yeah.
Yeah, after Millennium, everything was boring. Like Millennium was like I was genuinely interested in, and it was scary, which is strange because I don't really get scared at watching movies, but I was kind of like creeped out watching Millennium. Like X Files was kind of creepy, but it was just silly because it ran into a formula. But with Millennium, I was genuinely confused as to what was going on. So, but
There
that
was
was my favorite.
there was actually a British science fiction show. I think it was called like Invasion Earth. It was very like blasé title, but it's actually a unique alien invasion story. You know, it's probably on YouTube or something, but it's basically like, how would a modern military try to incur this alien threat? But it's like, it's an alien threat that no one can really like understand. It's not like from spaceships or anything like that. It's like a dimensional alien that's like invading. So that's kind of cool.
Reminded me of the reboot of V from the '70s when
Oh,
it came out.
yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah, that was cool. I thought that was a pretty well. I didn't watch it all, but I thought the visuals and the way that they introduced the aliens and how they're reptilian and they love moisture and all that crap. It's like, oh, cool.
Ah, they're lizard people, aren't they? Though?
Lizard
So
people.
probably.
Ah.
Ah,
Any interest in analyzing the story of the Stalker games? Not really. I'm not a big Stalker fan. Again, I love the inspiration it came from. I think it's one of my favorite, if not my favorite science fiction story, Roadside Picnic. But I don't know. The Stalker series are very loosely connected to that or inspired by it. So unless there's some really cool elements, I think the endings to one of the games UDP was talking about a few times that
yes. If you,
seem
that's Yeah, that was about if you're going to do falsified endings. In other words, there's going to be not true endings. One of the Stalker games did actually have had 4 or 5 false endings, and it
yeah.
showed you that they were false. Whereas everyone's like, "Oh, the Mass Effect 3 endings are false." It's like, no, they're not, because you see the events transpire after them. They're
Yeah.
real.
Like
You know?
that sounds interesting to me. I would pursue wanting to learn about that game, play the game, read the book if there's one. I would do that because that appeals to me. But in general, I don't just read random fiction just that's inspired by something. It's always an offshoot, and if it's not standalone by itself, it doesn't make its own name. It's kind of like, oh, it's imagine if Karpyshyn wrote his own flavor of Revan or his own version of Mass Effect. It'd be like, this is probably not what I want to read. Or any overall thoughts of the series in general? I actually don't know much about it. I know next to nothing. It's definitely about Luke. The German title translates to Skywalker's Rise. All right.
Do you
Okay, cool.
think? Do you think that's actually Luke's great plan? That he's just basically been banging a lot of women across the galaxy, and then suddenly he's gonna have like an army of Skywalkers.
It would explain why he's so angry and
Well,
dejected
well,
and why he
he's
ran
trying,
away.
well, yeah, he's trying to avoid alimony payments. That's why.
Exactly. And explains why the random kid with the broom, can do stuff. Because be like, where the hell did this kid come from? So, and plus the kid was white and male, so it's like, ooh, the evil, dejected runaway husband or runaway father, perfect for the Kathleen Kennedys of the world.
It's Commander Shepard on a port keen duty, isn't it?
No, Commander Shepard would be like riding high. He'd be like, yeah, this is exactly what I want. So, all right, guys, thanks very much for your time. I think we've exhausted all the questions, and we're going to call it a day or a night, depending on where you are And I'm going to go back to making some more videos. And any other recommendations? I think we've exhausted almost all of the Mass Effect critiques. This was May 2018 by Wudaba. Why Mass Effect Andromeda is secretly good. If you have any other recommendations, go on to Discord, leave me a note, leave me a comment in this video, and we will see you whenever. Who knows when?
Yeah. Send us videos to watch us suffer. That's why you do this.
Yeah, essentially. That's what it comes down to.
I'm
All right.
UDP, and that's why I drink.
Good night, everybody.